In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. George Orwell. Yeah. This is Blood Politics. The only podcast where we don't talk about politics. We be about politics. And our mission statement is to empower, educate, and encourage everyone to speak out against fascism. Speak out against injustice and fight for freedom and equality for everyone. This is blood politics, and we ain't stopping till they put us in the grave. We ain't gonna be quiet, and we ain't gonna be scared, and we ain't gonna go along with the crowd. This is blood politics.
All right, guys, good afternoon. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? The war is over. Congratulations, everybody. For, I think, the 39th time, we have had to talk about some ridiculous talk of a deal, and we're going to do that today on the show. I appreciate you once again for joining me. It is the 12th of June, 2026. My name's Brian. This is Blunt Politics, and like I said, welcome back to the I think 40th maybe now iteration of let's have a deal with Iran. We have some leaks being reported by the Iranian side, which were immediately disputed by Donald Trump in the White House. Both sides now trying to release their forms of whatever deal may or may not be in place. So we're going to go through all the craziness. So we're going to make sure that you guys are as up to speed as I am. We'll go through all of the, the accounting from, like I said, the Iranian side. What was released, what was put in their deal, what was said by the White House, what was said by Donald Trump, and what's going on, what you can expect, what you can't expect, all of that craziness. So I appreciate you once again for joining us, but it's like Groundhog's Day, baby. It's Friday, so there must be some sort of deal. If Barack Ravid is reporting it, if, what's his name, Trey Yingsten Fox is reporting it, then you know it must be some way possible, maybe kind of maybe dealing. The whole thing's nuts. The whole thing is nuts. But like I said, Friday's failure forecast today is 99% bullshit with a slight chance of peace talks, and you guys will be up to speed by the end of the show. We also got a Lego video already mocking Mike Tiny Johnson and the House for, going on another vacation because he had, I believe, 18 or 19 different Republicans that were going to flip the script on old Mike Johnson. So we'll look at that as well. We got Tim Pool, and my apologies, but Benny Johnson both predicting land invasions in Iran, which again, is a little counterintuitive compared to what Donald Trump is trying to have you believe today. And then we got some more videos as to the broader focus of Ukraine's plan to cut off at least the supply, if not entirely, the area of Crimea. So there's a bunch of videos I wanted to get into as far as that's concerned. Professor Gerrits is there, and a few other ones as well. So make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate you guys. What do you say we bring in the chat for a couple seconds? You guys, you make this show run. You deserve some screen time. What's going on, guys? How are you? What's happening? I appreciate everybody over there on Facebook. Thank you to everybody on YouTube, obviously Twitch, Instagram. Who am I missing? Substack, all of you guys. Thank you. Make sure you hit that like button. What's up, Corrine? I see you over there on Twitch. What's happening? How's everybody? What's up, Ali Yorkie? What's going on, Etch? What's up, Jim? What's going on, Tiff? DPD, how are you? What's up, Nola? What's going on, Yakov? Hope you're feeling better, my brother. What's going on, Graphene? I see you guys. I see you. What's up, Alan? Just Julie. Everybody, like I said, on Facebook, the whole 9 yards. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the mods. What's up, Vixen? I see you over there. What's going on, moms? What's going on, Andrea? Like I said, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 25K, but we're just going to be catching up on all the craziness, really. What's up, Gamer? What's going on, JD? How are you guys? What's up, Frank? Welcome in, one and all. Welcome in, one and all, to the craziness. Like I said, it is 12 June 2026, and we're just going to be going through the 99% bullshit with a slight chance of peace talks. But before we do, let's start off where we've been starting off, and I get it. I owe you guys more congratulations, more appreciations every single day. You amaze me with the amount of, contributions and the amount of involvement that you guys are responsible for. We're over 11,000 euro already. We've cracked the 50% mark in less than 2 weeks of this campaign, and it is an honor and a privilege to be a part of this, and to be a part of this movement in the community that we've built here. Thank you guys so much. But our fight is not over. The job is not done yet. Like I said, 53% of the way to our goal of 20,500 euro. I think 11,600 somewhere over in the 12,000 range, 12,200-ish, maybe something like that. So, like I said, to be able to raise over $12,000 as a smaller channel here on YouTube or all of the other accounts, let's just be real, is again very substantial. And it's like I said, an honor and a privilege to be a part of this. So thank you very, very much for this, and let's keep pushing, right? And I just want to reiterate that I in no way receive not a single penny. Nothing of this goes towards the channel or anything like this. This is 100% going. Everything that is raised goes right towards this specific fundraiser, the Summer of Drones, obviously to help 99, the 69 Sniffer Brigade. So I just want to make that clear. This channel sees absolutely nothing from this, and beyond that, I might even be spending my own dollars to get to Ukraine to maybe, if I'm lucky enough, hand this vehicle over in person when all is said and done. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. And let's do a quick refresh. Let's see if we can thank people on the wall. For some reason, not showing right now, but I just want to make sure we continuously thank some people that were responsible for getting us to this point. So it says here, Vasil, thank you so much for the 209 euros. Thank you, Elena, for the 105. Gregory, thank you so much for the $5. Arthur, thank you so much for the 105. Like I said, Thomas, you got Philippe in here with a $1,500 euro donation. So just really substantial, involvement, generosity being shown here. Colleen, MJ, Yakov, Moms, thank you to Nance and everybody else, Rocks, that's been a part of this. And like I said, let's keep pushing. Over 11,000 euro in less than 2 weeks is again nothing to shake a stick at, and I'm very proud to be a part of this. So very much appreciate it. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep fighting. All right, but let's get into the craziness that everybody's talking about. What do you say? And like I said, we're just going to go through all of the information so you guys are as up to speed as I am with all of the nonsense and craziness coming from this. We're just going to start right here, apparently, because this was the apparent leak by the Iranians, which kind of stipulated what was in this so-called agreement or pre-agreement or whatever the hell the ridiculous name that they're trying to give it. It's basically the starting point to agreement, right? It's like the precursor to an actual agreement. So as much as Donald Trump would have you believe that, the agreement is being signed, that's not really what it is. It's like what do they call it? A memorandum of understanding or something like that. So it's like, okay, we'll do these couple things, but, we still have a lot of things to figure out on the backside. But this is, like I said, reported by Yaroslav Trofimov. Let me see what I think he works for the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, chief foreign affairs correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, just so you don't think we're pulling up any random Joe Schmo on here. So it says, Iran's Mehr News agency publishes the purported text of the draft agreement with Trump. It will keep the Strait of Hormuz under Iranian control, will promise Iran $300 billion in reconstruction money in addition to an immediate cash transfer of $24 billion, a suspension of sanctions and the withdrawal of U.S. forces from the Middle East, also a commitment not to bother Iran, again, about its missiles and proxies and restraining Israel and Lebanon. The U.S. in exchange gets a pinky promise to respect the NPT. It says, let's see what happens here in the next coming days. And then it says here the full text. So a permanent and immediate cessation of war on all fronts, including Lebanon, a U.S. commitment not to interfere in Iran's internal affairs and to respect the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran, full liftings of the naval blockade within 30 days, a U.S. commitment to withdraw its forces from areas surrounding Iran. So the full lifting of the naval blockade within 30 days, I think that also is stipulated within the opening up of the Strait of Hormuz to, its capacity to, to full traffic as it was before the war. So we're still talking about, even if this deal is signed, which again, it seems far from that, since, both sides are in what Donald Trump has been saying, and both sides are so far apart on even what's been reported so far. It's crazy. It's just, how can you be that far apart on one specific deal that's either being worked on or not being worked on? It either says this or it doesn't say this. So to see the discrepancies between the two, which we'll go over here, is just, it again, right in line with what this administration has been responsible for anyway. It says suspension of sanctions on the sale of oil, petrochemical products, and related derivatives, along with full Iranian access to the resulting financial revenues. So we're already talking about, what was that, nearly $400 billion, right? as stated here by the text released by the Iranian side. It also says that the United States and its allies would be required to present reconstruction plans for Iran worth at least $300 billion. Again, this is basically, trying to get back, the damages, the losses occurred through this war because of the bombing and the missile and the drone strikes by the United States and Israel. It also says a 60-day negotiation period aimed at reaching a final agreement covering nuclear issues and the complete removal of U.S. primary and secondary sanctions, as well as the repeal of relevant resolutions of the UN Security Council and the IAEA Board of Governors. So 60 days negotiation period aimed at reaching, where'd I go? What did I do with that? 60 days negotiating period aimed at reaching a final agreement covering nuclear issues. So again, listen to that and then take that into account, and then we'll hear what the White House is saying it states in this agreement, or so-called agreement, as it were. And it's, again, this seems to be more like a diplomatic speak. This seems to be more along the lines of the text that you would hear in this agreement. And then when you hear what's released by the White House, what's released by the spokespeople and what's said by Donald Trump, it's like third grade talk. You know what I mean? We'll go over it, but it's like a kid with a crayon, just sitting there writing down five points that they want to see him, reached. And then this says here that the United States and the 60-day negotiation period for covering the nuclear issues. And then it goes on to say that the reaffirmation by Iran of its commitment under the non-nuclear proliferation treaty not to produce nuclear weapons. During the negotiation period, the United States would commit not to deploy additional forces to the region and not to impose any new sanctions. The release of $24 billion in frozen Iranian assets during the 60-day final negotiation period. So again, well above and beyond anything that was afforded to the Iranians during the JCPOA. So we'll have to see what the Republican side is saying about this, and I'll look up the quote tweets from this. And there's a lot of people on the right that if this is in fact the text, if this is in fact the deal, are not going to be very happy, which is kind of provoking JD Vance and others to come out and say, well, it's not really what's stated, type of thing. But like I said, we'll go over it. It says here that the establishment of monitoring mechanism to oversee implementation of the agreement. The final agreement would be approved through a UN Security Council resolution. Final negotiations would not begin before the release of half of Iran's frozen assets, the suspension of the suspension of oil sanctions, and the lifting of the naval blockade. So the final negotiations, the act of actually getting to the signing of some sort of deal, wouldn't even happen until the United States releases at least half of Iran's frozen assets, so billions and billions and billions of dollars. The suspension of all oil sanctions have to be lifted, right? And the lifting of the naval blockade. So the United States has to fuck off. We have to lift all the oil sanctions, and we basically have to give back billions and billions and billions of dollars before the Iranians, as stated here, say that they would even come to the table for the final negotiations, and not just this memorandum of understanding, as they've been calling it here. And it says here, the final agreement would focus exclusively on the future of enriched nuclear material and uranium enrichment, sanctions relief, and a program for rebuilding Iran's economy. So that seems like down the road, right? That kind of seems like in the future that will be discussed. So again, take that into account and remember that when you hear what the White House is saying this says. So it says discussions of Iran's missile program and its support for resistance groups would be definitively excluded from the agenda. As stated by the Foreign Ministry spokesperson, the text still requires review and final approval by the relevant authorities in Iran. So like I said, if we go this way, take this over here. I think there was a couple other posts I wanted to show before we go into the quote tweet showing you what everybody else was saying about this. He also goes, let's just say it would be very difficult for Trump or any other U.S. president to explain such a deal. Let's see what, if anything, gets actually agreed upon, which obviously can change at a moment's notice. This is Dan Shapiro says, I've been calling for Trump to accept the inevitable bad deal to get us out of this war. Now, what's this guy's? Let's see. He is the former U.S. ambassador to Israel, Defense Department, State Department, NSC, Atlantic Council, working toward a secure, yada, yada, yada. So he says basically Trump should, basically take this bad deal and just get us out of this before the economy and everything else kind of goes over the edge. But even I think the absurd terms laid out here must represent Iranian spin and cannot possibly be the shape of an actual deal. So again, everybody looking at this and thinking that this is the United States just, if they do agree to this, just capitulating, right? This is just just the recognition that the United States has lost this war. If in fact these points do get agreed to by the United States, if Iran is allowed to walk away with all of these things that were just stipulated. And like I said, even the text, the way it's written, it seemed more like diplomatic speak. It seemed like it was coming from, a spokesperson, someone engaging in these negotiations. But when you look at, the statements being released by the White House, it's like a third grader did it with fucking crayon. It's crazy. It really is. So let's see. There was a couple other ones here. Here's a statement by Trump, right? So in response to the Iranians releasing that text, Donald Trump says this. He says, the terms that Iran leaked out to the fake news have nothing being capitalized, to do with the terms that were agreed to in writing. What they said, including their weak and pathetic statement on having a deal, bears no relation to the truth. Very dishonorable people to deal with. With them, there is no such thing as dealing in good faith. Amazing is in caps too. Also, their totally rebuffed drone attack last night against Indian ships leaving the Hormuz Strait is totally unacceptable. They better get their act together and fast. Right. So again, to sit there and call people very dishonorable, right, to say they're weak and pathetic, probably not the best way to engage in a negotiation, probably not the best way to engage in peace talks. But, I do digress. That's, again, right in line with what we've seen time and time again. Here's a statement by Abbas Aragachi, which we've been looking at for the last several months. And his exact title is the Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran, just to refresh everybody's memory. It says the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding has never been closer. Pending its finalization, the media should refrain from entering speculation about its content. In line with our responsible and transparent approach, all details will be shared with the public in due course. So which this kind of invited JD Vance. And maybe before we go into JD Vance's statement, I'll go into the quote tweet surrounding this exact post, because there was a bunch of them that we have to go over here. So Mark Levin, right, fat guy on Fox News, one of the war hawks, one of the warmongers that was desperate to see this war continue, and to see the Iranians basically wiped out. He said here, when will our government release the terms of the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding? In the meantime, here's what Iran's media is reporting. Everyone okay with this? So he's basically stating, we better not be agreeing to this. This better not be the actual text of the deal. So even Mark Levin, very, very weakly calling this out to make sure that he's sending a signal to Donald Trump, like, people aren't going to be okay with this. Here's Michael Weiss says, if this is it, I can see why Trump wants Vance to attend a signing ceremony instead of Trump. So obviously making fun of the deal that would be made. Adam Kingsinger, wow, Trump is a genius, huh? Midas Touch posts a permanent and immediate cessation of war on all fronts, including Lebanon. So I think they're just kind of rehashing the bullet points there coming from the Iranian side. This is Tim Miller. Tim Miller says, seems like we are really close to the finish line here, LOL. Obviously mocking this whole process. Tommy Vitor, who knows if this report is just made up or not by the Iranian media, but these are comically bad terms for the United States. Phillips O'Brien says, if this is true, Trump is waving the white flag for all to see. Again, we read that one already. I'm going to assume the current reporting on the MOU is wrong, because otherwise it would be the most one-sided deal imaginable. Objectively, it would be 100 times worse than even the Obama nuclear deal, and a total inexplicable defeat at the negotiating table after a successful military operation. So again, you can see somebody who even says this is, they're on the side of the military operation, say it was a success, but also recognize this deal. And if the United States actually agrees to it, as being just like total and outright capitulation and the acknowledgement that you lost this war, basically. So it goes on here. If this text were accurate, it wouldn't be a victory, but a triumph for Iran. I can't believe it. Let's see here. Iran is leaking the same garbage they always leak about the deal. Unfortunately, this deal, no deal cycle looks more of the same. So even if you don't think that this is the true text coming from the deal, like this is all more of the same repetitive bullshit. Both sides saying that there's a deal. One side releases the text. The other side releases the text. They're both very far apart from each other. And next thing you know, the bombs are falling again and we're right back to square one. Mark Thiessen says this would be a disaster. Wu-Tang Clan for Wu-Tang is for the children says, laughing my ass off. Holy shit, if true. Trump has given Iran a sweetheart deal, $24 billion immediately, and then another $300 billion later. What about the precious, quote, nuclear dust he's always talking about? Jonathan Schanzer, floored. Dan Shapiro, we read that one. This one says, I find it hard to believe that Trump will sign such a deal. His legacy will be tarnished and the right-wing media will eat him alive. It will be a worse deal than the JCPOA. And there's a ton of them that go on, even down to Lindsey Graham. I think I have that one pulled up somewhere as well. But let's go back and we'll take a look at what J.D. Vance had to say. Let me see. Did I pull that one up by itself? No, I think I had. Oh, yeah, here's Lindsey Graham's one that I had pulled up. Here's from Senator Graham, as Clash Report says. The idea of a $300 billion reconstruction fund, given who is in charge of Iran, seems to be tone deaf. It would be akin to the Marshall Plan for Germany with the Nazis still in charge, says Lindsey Graham. And he goes on with this big screed of, congratulating POTUS. And, he's glad that, President Trump is hearing the Iranian side, but, basically stating in a backhanded way, if this deal is done, it would be absolutely disastrous and they would be mocked to the end of the earth for this. So, you can see here even Senator Lindsey Graham having a problem with it. But let's go back to where J.D. Vance, I'll throw this back on the screen. Let's see here. Back a little bit. I think it was up here. Because J.D. Vance basically saw all of the, the rumors flying around on social media. Here it is right here. And he thought it necessary to kind of, chime in a little bit and give his 2 cents. So J.D. Vance says, quote, "I'm seeing a lot of fake information about a potential deal to reopen the strait and end Iran's nuclear weapons program. First, the Iranians are not receiving any cash," right? So he seems to be very careful and picky and choosy about the way he's speaking about this and the words that he uses. I don't understand how we could go from the Iranian side saying that not only would there be $24 billion involved in frozen assets, but also $300 billion in reconstruction funds, to go from that to the vice president of the United States saying that absolutely no cash will be handed over. Now, I don't know if cash is just kind of getting them out of some deal and they're going to get the funds through other, through some other routes, and it won't just be physical cash. And that's kind of how he's getting away with this. I'm not sure. But he also says, and no funds are being released for simply signing a deal or attending a meeting. Okay, so that seems to be a deal breaker right off the bat then. Because per the Iranian side, at least half of the frozen assets need to be released to the Iranians before they would even agree to sit down for a final deal. So I don't see how we're even going to go forward past J.D. Vance's post here with this signing, with this agreement, because it already seems to be, a line in the sand by the Iranians, not agreed to by J.D. Vance here. He says the deal is structured to ensure that the United States and its allies concerned are prioritized, and if the Islamic Republic of Iran meets its obligations, then the economic benefits will flow to them and to the entire region. The deal has the potential to remake the region and lead to lasting peace. I've noticed a couple of bizarre things in the reporting over the last few hours. First, people who rightly said Donald Trump was a historic president a month ago, now criticizing a deal based on unconfirmed media reports. So that's the Mark Levins, the Lindsey Grahams, the rest of the people on the right that we just read a few of their posts in concern about what the hell this deal states. So then he says, basically, second, people who are saying you can't trust a word by the IRGC, who apparently believe anonymously sourced social media posts the president is going to get as a good outcome one way or another. So you can see, and what's all open source say, the anonymous sources are Iran's official state news agencies describing the deal to its own population. If their version is fake, the fix is simple: publish the text, right? So that's, again, what people are calling for. If that's not what's actually in the deal, post the goddamn deal yourself. So this is what you get if you actually do see what's being posted by the right side, about this same deal. So this is Eric Doherty posting, President Trump's Iran deal terms are reportedly as follows. So we just heard from the Iranian side. Let me put it back on the screen. No, I don't have it. It's J.D. Vance's, but we just read the whole text of the Iranian side and what is, allegedly in the text of this. So let me throw this back on the screen where it says, this is from the White House, right? So tell me this doesn't sound like a fucking third grader crushing a crayon writing this shit. So we just heard a really in-depth, very well explained thing of what they want to see happen, the amount of money, the amount of time. We had deadlines, 60 days, 30 days, specific amounts of money, 24 billion, 300 billion, specifically stated things as far as the IAEA. All of that was involved in the Iranian text. What do we get from the White House? We get nuclear material will be destroyed and removed. 2, nuclear program dismantled. 3, no funds released until they carry out the terms. 4, Hormuz Strait open. 5, Iran cannot fund terrorist groups. It's like, wait a minute, what the fuck? Who wrote this? Your son? Your little kid? Like, I don't understand. Trump said the terms Iran leaked are fake news. Imagine that. Make it happen or force them to submit. And this is part of this little clip that he posted where, it's coming from the White House, and it's the same thing. Nuclear material will be destroyed and removed. Nuclear program will be dismantled. None of their money will be released until they perform. What the fuck does that mean? None of their money will be released until they perform? Why does that sound like some fucking creepy guy at a strip club? Like, I'm not going to release I'm not going to release these singles, huh? These $1 bills ain't leaving my hand until you perform. Like, these sickos. Like, what the fuck does that even mean, right? So it just seems to be like this deal is a non-starter. We're already on non-starter negotiation terms right now with this whole thing. But I'll play this quick clip in which, Eric Doherty's getting his information from real quick here.
White House officials telling Fox Iran's nuclear material will be destroyed and removed. Its nuclear program will be dismantled. None of their sanctioned money will be released until they carry out the terms of the deal. The Strait of Hormuz will be open, and Iran will not provide any funding for terrorist groups.
So again, that's it. That's what's coming from the White House official, apparently, and that's the key terms of the deal. As said by, again, a third grader with a big fucking red crayon, just, again, writing that on the White House walls, apparently, big enough for Barack Ravid and, what is his name, Trey Yingst, to be able to report on. Am I wrong? Right? I mean, does it not seem here? I'll even go back. We'll go back to this real quick. Well, I'll just give you a taste of what the other side said. And again, this isn't even if you agree or disagree with with the stipulations, or disagree with, what they're asking for. But just look at the way it's written: a permanent and immediate cessation of war on all fronts, including Lebanon. U.S. commitment to not interfere in Iran's internal affairs and to respect the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Full lifting of the naval blockade within 30 days. Reopening of the Strait of Hormuz within 30 days under arrangements determined by Iran. So again, going back to, even if this is agreed to now, it's still going to be a 30-day period before you see going back to the amount of traffic that was happening before this war enacted. So, that's another 30 days of not having that go through the strait, even if this is signed, just to let you know. But I mean, just go on. It says, talks about $300 billion, 60-day negotiating period, talking about the IAEA, the Board of Governors, the UN Security Council, $24 billion in frozen assets, 60-day final negotiating period, right? It seems more thought out. It seems more well written, right? It seems like it actually came from a government or a governmental spokespeople. Like, you know what I mean? That's kind of what I get from that. And if you go back to the White House and what they're stating, let me go back. Where is it? This one? Yeah. You go back to this one. It's like, strait will be open. Nuclear material gone. It's like, okay. Like, Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Like, who's in charge? What is happening? Right? We have an old, decrepit, mentally incapable fool right now in the White House, surrounded by other, somehow younger, are supposed to be like more equipped, more able people, but are somehow just as like mentally inept as that decrepit fool. It's almost like it bleeds from Donald Trump's brain down to everybody else in his administration. But again, that's what they're saying. Nuclear material would be destroyed and removed. Nuclear program dismantled. No funds released. Straits open. It's like, that's not... Again, that's just ridiculous accounting of what's in that deal. Can we actually get the deal? How hot is that? Can we just get what does the deal actually say? Can we get the actual piece of paper? Can we get the actual text? Right? Seems like I'm more willing to take into account the Iranian side and the text that they released, just on the basis of being more well-written type of thing. You know what I mean? But that's me. But here's Fars. Just figured would kind of go through this to see if they had anything. The last thing that they posted was 23 hours ago. Says, given that the United States has accepted Iran's proposed text, right? So again, see how far apart we are as far as the reporting from the White House and the Iranian side? So the White House is saying that Iran agreed to their text, right? Donald Trump said that during their bombing campaign, Iran had called them to ask them to stop, right? Immediately disputed by the Iranian side, said we absolutely didn't call a motherfucker. We didn't call a single person to say any of that, right? So now Donald Trump's saying that the Iranians agreed to our proposal, immediately disputed by the United States agreed to our text. It's like, it's fucking Twilight Zone. You know what I mean? We're all living in La La Land. But it says the likelihood of an agreement being approved by Tehran's highest decision-making authorities is relatively high, as per reported there by the Fars news agency. An informed source told FNA Iran has not approved any draft agreement or initial memorandum with the United States, contradicting President Donald Trump's claim that Tehran agreed to a finalized text. So again, just trying to show you basically everything that's been announced and said so far. You saw the text there by Trump. There was a few other things. Let me see here, because there was this one as well. My Ron Filipowski from Midas Touch says, "Here we go again." As Donald Trump consistently calls them dishonorable people. It says that they can't be trusted. They're weak and pathetic. But also, we're working on a deal at the same time with these people. There was this as well, because this was again pretty pretty striking when you hear the amount of times. Like, we could say this is the 39th or 40th time that Donald Trump has said that the deal is right around the corner. But I think CNN here put together just a little montage of the times that Donald Trump claimed that a deal is close. So again, it's one thing to say 39 times, and it's another thing to hear it. I'm not sure if this is all 39, but again, you guys kind of get the idea of it. But here's 45 seconds of Donald Trump claiming that a deal is right around the corner.
We have major points of agreement. They want to make a deal, and we are very willing to make a deal.
Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure when they want to make a deal so badly. You have no idea how badly they want to make a deal.
They want to make a deal so badly. I do see a deal in Iran. We were very close to a deal.
I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over.
It's looking very good that we're going to make a deal with Iran, and it's going to be a good deal. This process should go very quickly. We're going to end that war.
Oh, yeah. Before I go on with that, too, I forgot to interject. Please, somebody keep an eye on Jim Acosta's live, because I do believe that sometime today they'll be ripping Trump's name off the Kennedy Center. I think he had like a little bit of a live stream going. So if anybody's watching that on a separate screen or something, let me know if they actually do start removing his name, because I think I'll definitely want to see that. I think I'd like to see his name removed off a building. So if anybody could chime in, get my attention. I don't know if Tiff needs to text me on the phone. I know sometimes I'm not glancing at the chat, but if anybody does catch the moment in time where they start removing his name, let me know.
Very quickly, they want to make a deal so badly. We think we're close to a deal, and that's okay. We're in the final throes of what will be a very, very good deal.
Today makes 39 times that he has said something like that.
39 fucking times. Like I said, I think that's just kind of a fraction of the times that he stated this, but you get the gist of it. You can see how ridiculously strung along we've all been in this process, which is why nobody right now has gotten any hopes up. Nobody has any beliefs that we're any closer to a deal. Again, when you look at what the rhetoric and the statements from the Iranian side, and you compare them to the White House and Donald Trump, and then you put them together, it doesn't seem like a situation where they're really close to signing anything or agreeing on anything. Right. Look at JD Vance's statement. Looks to be a non-starter right off the bat. Midas Touch says clown show. Right. So let's see. There was some other posters related to this as well. Let me see if there was some other ones. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, there was this one as well that kind of gives you the timeline a little bit. This is from John Arnold. Says 3-1, 4 to 5 weeks. These are all quotes from Trump. 3-9, very soon. 3-16, won't be long. 3-23, very good and productive conversations. 3-26, talks to the end of the war are going very well. 3-29, quote, I think we'll make a deal with them, pretty sure. 4-1, very shortly. 4-6, they've made a proposal, and it's a significant proposal. 4-8, a big day for world peace. 5-18, we've had very big discussions with Iran. 5-23 will be announced shortly. 6-1 rapid pace. 6-11 next few days. So again, just to rehash and recount how many times we've heard this same exact thing. Let me see here if there was anything else. They say interesting wordplay by Vance here, which acknowledges the U.S. giving funds to Iran, which is very much part of the deal that is being negotiated. So again, I think his little wordplay and the way he's trying to utilize the rhetoric that he's got there is he's being a little bit tricky. Let's just say he's being a little bit tricky. This is what I was just talking about. So if anybody could let me know when that happens. I think somebody said that the workers are on a break. They're on lunch break right now. So, we'll keep an eye on that. But all right, let's see if there was anything else that I needed to report on this as well. I think there was a couple more on this, on how the right is kind of reporting on this. Maybe not. People just making fun of Pete Hegseth. Let's see here. No, I think that was it from that one as well. This one was Senator Graham's. Let's see if there was anything else reported by them. JD Vance's post. We already went through that. So, no, like I said, I think we're kind of up to speed and up to date as far as that is concerned. But like I said, I'm sure these statements and the rhetoric coming from the Iranian side and the White House is going to change by the second. But while this is all taking place, let me throw this on the screen because this was reported by the Kobisi letter. And this is just pertaining to daily life, you guys and me, and what we have to go through and what we're paying on a daily basis, right, as we continue to see for the 39th time the deal right around the corner to try to manipulate the markets in some way, shape, or form. This says the average price of U.S. ground beef rises 13% year over year in May to a record $7.06 a pound, with prices now up 58% since 2020. Steak price surge 16% year over year. That's now $12.80 a pound, the second highest on record. This comes after the U.S. cattle herd has shrunk to its lowest in 75 years, with drought conditions, elevated production costs, and a New World screwworm outbreak in Texas limiting supply recovery. Meanwhile, nearly 80% of U.S. cattle are currently located in areas facing dryness or drought, threatening to keep beef prices elevated well into 2027. American consumers are paying record prices for beef, and that's not all. I'm sure you guys notice everything when you go to the grocery store. We've talked about, obviously, the gas prices. This is just kind of another way to drill that home. Since Donald Trump began his second term in January 2025, overall consumer prices have risen approximately 4.8%, so nearly 5% overall through across the board, while inflation hovered comfortably between 2.4 and 2.7% throughout 2025. Consumer costs surged sharply in early 2026 due to regional geopolitical impacts from the Iran war and universal domestic trade tariffs, both of which were just us shooting ourselves in the foot by Donald Trump. By June 2026, the annual headline inflation rate had a 3-year high of 4.2%, which we recently reported on. It says here, the chart below just kind of gives you an idea of some of the 12-month price changes here. So gasoline up 40.5% over the last 12 months. Energy is up 23.5% over the last 12 months. Apparel, so like I said, clothing, anything that gets to you by ship, ships use diesel. Anything that gets to you by plane, planes use jet fuel, right? Anything that gets to you by truck, trucks use diesel. So all of those things that you have to buy your goods in the stores, those prices are now reflecting all of the added costs that these companies are facing. So apparel up almost 5% over the last 12 months. Overall inflation, like we talked about, up to 4.2%. Shelter, so rent, up 3.4%. Groceries up 2.7%. And that's obviously the food at home. So you can see here, and it gives kind of a bigger breakdown here. Gasoline, 40.5% spike significantly due to energy market disruptions linked to the war in Iran, pushing the national average to about $4.26. And again, I'm not sure what date that was at or what it is right now. Let's take a look real quick. What is the gas price right now? I'll tell you the truth. It is at $4.10. So current average is $4.10. Yesterday's average is $4.12. Week ago, average $4.22. Month ago was $4.50. But then compared to obviously a year ago at $3.12, you can still see the substantial rise in that as well. So let me see. We'll go back to this. It says tomatoes 32%, lettuce 24%. Experienced substantial spikes tied directly to domestic labor constraints and agricultural supply shifts. I wonder if that has to do with Donald Trump's immigration policy. I wonder if that has to do with threats to the farmers, that Donald Trump's tariffs have placed on the American farmers here. Coffee, a lot of coffee drinkers, I'm sure, in the chat. Not a coffee drinker myself, but obviously a lot of people are. Coffee up 25 to 35%, climbed steeply throughout 2025 and 2026 due to global supply chain challenges in import pricing. Beef and ground beef, 13% and 21%. Surge due to dwindling domestic cattle herd, like we talked about, severe regional droughts, and newer import tariffs. Apparel, almost 5%. Rose modestly, with retail clothing and footwear feeling upward price pressures, heavily driven by broad sweeping import tariffs. So again, stop me when it's something that it wasn't directly placed upon us by our own president. Shelter and rent, 3.5%, remains stable relative to historical peaks, but continues to steadily eat into household budgets. Whole milk, eggs. I think it says here that eggs was basically the only thing that saw a significant fall, and that was obviously because of the problems that we saw with eggs in the flu with the birds and stuff like that. So that's not kind of reflective of the overall economy and the overall market right now in consumer prices that you guys are now paying. But I'm sure, like I said, I don't need to reiterate that to you guys. You guys are out there daily, spending the money, going to the grocery store, getting gas, buying things that you need for your daily existence. So obviously you guys have seen the price increase. But let me throw this on the screen here. This is just kind of a recapping of what's been going on with the latest releases from, like I said, Iran. Obviously, on the side of the White House, this is just from CNN. Trump calling the Iranians dishonorable, but needs to get their act together at the same time on a peace deal. So, like I said, this is just kind of a recounting of what's been happening this morning. So I appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're seeing, if you find yourself coming back, even if you don't like me, even if you hate the show, but you do find yourself coming back, just subscribe. Doesn't change anything, doesn't hurt you, doesn't cost you a cent, but it definitely helps the channel. So like I said, here's CNN just giving us an update on what's been going on with the back and forth and the fucking the peace deal that was released but not agreed to, but it's not the terms, but it is the terms. It's craziness.
After saying there was a deal, President Trump is now lashing out at Iran. In a Truth Social post that appeared just a few moments ago, he called Tehran, and I'm quoting him now, dishonorable for what he's calling inaccurate descriptions of a proposed agreement. He also said they better get their act together and they better do so fast. Let's go to CNN's Kristen Holmes over at the White House. Kristen, what else is the president saying this morning? It's all very dramatic.
Yeah, and we're going to get to what he's saying in a second, but I do want to explain how we got here and what it is that he is referring to, because we had gotten a readout of this memorandum of understanding from a diplomat who had been briefed on what was in this document. And some of the key points were this, that it would be a 60-day ceasefire that would include everything, Lebanon included, that the Strait of Hormuz would be opened immediately, and that pre-war levels of traffic would begin again within 30 days, that the U.S.
So again, this is coming from, as it says here on the screen, a diplomat. I'm covering it right now. You can't see it, but it says on the bottom of that, it says diplomat briefed on matter. So you can see already the discrepancies between who you talk to, right? Who thinks what's reported, who kind of attributes what to who said what, and how they contextualize what was written. But this says 60-day ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon, immediate reopening of Strait of Hormuz. The first thing that we said was within 30 days, right? So I don't know if they just decided to cut that part out, or that's not what this diplomat was talking about. But again, you can see the differences in just who's reporting on this, and it's crazy that you just can't get one clear, concise readout, printout. Here's the fucking agreements. Here's the points. Either agree to it or change the points. You know what I mean? It's crazy that the reporting is so all over the place, and that the Iranian side can say one thing, the White House can say another, and they can be completely, miles apart between what they say.
Blockade of ports and some Iranian sanctions would all open up as part of this deal, and that it satisfies all the U.S. requirements on the nuclear issue. So that is what we had been reporting. Then we had Iran come out, state media, and give their version of the deal, which looks significantly different. And there are a couple of points in there that are likely to make President Trump angry. One of them, they would not commit to ceding control over the Strait of Hormuz. And the other is that frozen funds, these frozen assets that have been a point of contention for President Trump, they say, Iranian state media, and of course, keep in mind the source here, that the agreement would demand the release of $24 billion in those frozen funds. So now you have President Trump reacting to this, essentially saying that the terms that Iran leaked to the fake news media have nothing to do with the terms that were agreed to in writing. What they said, including their weak, pathetic statement on having a deal, bears no relation to the truth. And with them, there is no such thing as dealing in good faith. I assume what he's talking about when he talks about their weak and pathetic statement on the deal is the fact that we had heard that the response to the deal, or the response to President Trump, was that the text still requires review and finalization. They have been saying that it has not been signed off on. President Trump, of course, saying that everybody was in agreement. So that is what is happening now. And again, we've been down this path before. President Trump says
40 times before. And does it sound like to you guys that everybody's on the same wavelength, right? Does it sound like to you guys that everybody's on the same page here, and it's just like a couple details here and there that need to be finalized and switched up before we actually get an agreement? Or does it sound like the two sides couldn't be further apart? Like, because that's what I'm getting. Right? It just sounds like the Iranians think that one thing is happening, the United States thinks that another thing is happening, and the two sides never shall meet. It's amazing how they could be that far apart, apparently, somehow negotiating or engaged in peace talks, as apparently Donald Trump is lobbing missiles into Iran, as apparently Iran's lobbing missiles into U.S. bases. This is like supposedly going on behind the scenes. So then why the fuck are we bombing them? None of it makes sense. None of it tracks. And again, like I said, it's just what I consistently point out here to you guys on the show is how different the two sides are, how far apart the two sides are on at least what's being reported on, what's being released. And we're kind of, again, left in the middle somewhere to figure out the truth, put the pieces of the puzzle together and figure out what's actually fucking going on.
the deal is imminent. And then we see a situation like this where one of the sides starts to backpedal and it all falls through. So we'll see what's going to happen now. U.S. officials are still cautiously optimistic.
we shall see. All right, Kristen Holmes over at the White House for us. Thank you very much, Pamela.
All right, Wolf, let's continue this conversation with CNN political and global affairs analyst Barack Ravid. He's also the global affairs correspondent for Axios. What do you make of this development with President Trump going from they've reached a great...
And again, I would just like to thank Barack Ravid for climbing out of Donald Trump's asshole for a couple minutes, putting on a new change of clothes and sitting down with CNN. But again, this is the guy that has consistently, time and time again, been there to report on Donald Trump's bullshit and make it seem like it was a deal just around the corner. So why CNN is having this loser on, I don't know. Again, there's probably some worth in there, considering that it's, Barack Ravid and Trey Yingst from Fox News that Donald Trump likes to communicate with, likes to contact as far as pushing out his propaganda. So again, if you're going to talk to anybody that's spoken to the president, it's got to be these two idiots, one of these two idiots, fucking Barack Ravid or Trey Yingst on Fox News. But why you think you're going to get some like pertinent information out of this dickhead, I have no idea. But I'll give him about 30 seconds of his bullshit, and then we're going on to something else.
Settlement to now saying Iran needs to get its act together because of what the state media there is reporting, which is different from what the U.S. has said.
Yes, I think what the U.S. has been told by the Qatari mediators and the Pakistani mediators and the Iranian negotiators themselves yesterday was that they're basically ready to sign. That was the message that the White House got. And
no, that's the message that the White House told you they got. Okay. Have you seen anything that was a message given or delivered to the White House? Have you seen any evidence to prove that? Have you reported on any evidence to suggest that was actually the case? Because what I'm hearing is that Donald Trump called you up on your fucking cell phone, said that was the case, and now you're just reporting it as fact without having anything to substantiate that claim, right? Which is why you consistently find yourself in the fucking corner looking like an asshole time and time again, reporting on this. Oh, yep, they said they want a deal. They're going to do a deal. The deal's right around the corner. Next thing you know, the bombs are flying and you're right back to square one without actually acknowledging how many times you've been wrong before. Like, why would anybody listen to this guy's reporting? Why? Somebody give me just give me one fucking reason why we would listen to this guy's reporting. You'd think if somebody told you something that was going to happen 40 fucking times and it didn't happen, you wouldn't go back to that dickhead for his advice on what's going to happen the 41st, 42nd, and 43rd time. Am I wrong? You know what I mean? If somebody got you into a sticky situation, if you went to somebody for advice and they fucked you over 19 times in a row, would you go back to them for the 20th? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any fucking sense why anybody would listen to a word this dickhead has to say. And again, above and beyond the fact that Donald Trump calls him directly, it doesn't matter because all you're getting is the words of Donald Trump. All you're getting is the fucking, the maniacal fucking self-dealings of Donald Trump through another person's words. That's basically all that happens here. So again, I'm not going to be sitting here letting this guy utilize my platform to spew his bullshit and Donald Trump's bullshit at the same time without giving any evidence or facts to substantiate any of the claims whatsoever. So let me throw this one on the screen. We'll go on from him. And this was surprisingly, or not surprisingly, the Legos already getting right on top of Mike Tiny Dick Johnson and laughing at basically the House for another self-paid vacation, and Mike Johnson recognizing that he doesn't have the votes and people don't like him, and he actually has people that are willing to vote against him, so he'd rather just send people the fuck home for a couple weeks. Why do work as the House? Why actually act for the American people and pass laws and legislation to make sure shit keeps rolling and shit keeps flowing in this country? No need for that. Just go home for another couple weeks. But like I said, Akon here, who has been putting out some pretty good Lego videos from the start, is already well on top of this. So this is one of their videos making fun of, like I said, Mike Tiny Dick Johnson and the House for not sticking around, and the fact that they had 19 GOP rebels crash the FISA vote. As it says here, MAGA Mike sends everyone home. Sounds like a political thriller episode turned into a Lego rock anthem. So let's see what they make fun of in this one. I appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. My name is Brian. This is the Blunt Politics Podcast. And like I said, I appreciate you for taking the time out of your day to be here with me.
Lights out on Capitol Hill, but ain't nobody changed the boat. They just packed up early, left the people in.
I don't know if that's supposed to be Mike Johnson. I'm not sure.
19 Republicans stood up, said not today, not this bill. And Mike Johnson looked around like, wait, my own team folded. Face on the floor, surveillance dressed in red, white, and blue.
Whoa. One said go home, the other sign said go ho.
Protect the homeland, they say, while they're watching me and you.
Persona non grata. I think that would be the entirety of the United States at this point.
2/3 needed, 2/3 short. The math just wasn't there. So Speaker Mike said, see y'all later, packed his bags, vanished in thin air. 3 weeks off, 3 weeks dark, Lawrence still due on the 1st. While the lights at home stay on, but the lights in D.C. worse. They say it's principle, they say it's privacy concerns. But watch how fast that principle dies when the donor check returns. Yeah. Now here's the spin, here's the game, here's the hidden hand. Every channel got a different headline, same exact land. One side says chaos, other side says stand strong. Both of them getting paid either way, both of them singing the same song. And Cornyn, man lost his primary, now he's preaching doom. Bloodbath in November sounds like a man who already lost the room. Funny how the truth comes out right after they get voted out. Courage is real cheap when the
Talking about the midterms, bloodbath in November.
nothing left to lose, no doubt. Meanwhile, the building's empty, echoes where the debates should be. 19 empty chairs where the rebels used to disagree, but disagree on what exactly. Half of them just want the cameras, half of them really worry about the warrants and the data. It's dark humor, I gotta laugh, cause what else can you do when the people sworn to serve you treat the whole thing like a costume? Suit on, flag pin, mic ready, smile for the lens. Then ghost the building like a landlord, dodging rent. MAGA Mike, America first. First one out the door, though. First one to recess when the heat starts to show. And this
First one out the door, first one to recess. Again, time and time again, we've had to report on the fact that Mike Johnson would rather just send everybody home and not get any work done than have to face some sort of vote that wasn't going to go his way.
surveillance bill still floating, still alive. They'll bring it back in 3 weeks, dressed up, freshly disguised. Cause that's the trick, that's the play, that's the oldest game in town. Let it feel loud, then pass it quiet when nobody's around. Spinning it as a win for privacy, spin it as go pee in disarray. But the surveillance state don't care which spin wins the day. So while they vacation, while the statements get rehearsed, ask yourself who's watching and who's getting watched first. Dark house, dark mics, dark humor, dark times. But the people stay lit even when they cut the lines. 3 weeks, that's all. 3 weeks of silence from the hill. 3 weeks for the next headline, the next outrage, the next bill.
So like I said, the Lego video is already going after Tiny Dick Mike Johnson there for just sending everybody home once again. Didn't like the fact that he wasn't going to have the votes. Didn't like the fact that he had 19 of his own members that were apparently not going to side with him. So like he said, he'd rather a 2 or 3 week paid vacation rather than have to face the American people and do the right thing. But, you know, time and time again, we've seen these weak, pathetic hacks take that road and not do the right thing by the American people. But all right, let's see what these idiots here on the right are saying, because as we're trying to report on this like ridiculous back and forth about a peace agreement, apparently Tim Pool is suggesting something else to his audience, because I think he's suspecting something else, because he says the U.S., as it says here, the U.S. will invade Iran. And there's no question mark there. That seems to be a pretty, I don't know, like a pretty bold statement, let's just say, by Timmy Poo. And like I said, this was 22 hours ago, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that this may have been slightly before the reporting today of this new, the war's over. The war's over. Again, the war's over, 49th time. But let's see what Tim Pool is going to say here for a little bit. I'm curious what information he's going to use to suggest that Donald Trump's going to put boots on the ground. I'm thinking that he's going to say Carg Island based upon what Donald Trump said the other night. But let's see what bullshit we get into here and call out from Tim Pool. Appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. Play.
Treat them much like they have Venezuela. And then a few hours later, Donald Trump announced that the strikes planned against Iran are canceled and there will be a signing shortly, which I can only just say is who knows what's really going on. This has to be like the 8th time Trump has said we're going to strike them. No, we're not. Psych, we're going to strike them.
No, Tim, a lot more than that. I got to say, your math is way the hell off on this one. Like I said, I don't know if that beanie's squeezing a little bit too tight today or if your calculator ran out of batteries, but it's definitely more than that. It's probably about the 24th time that he's suggesting, either a deal or we're going to just eliminate the entirety of Iran at this point.
The only guess, to be honest, is that there's a bunch of people that have figured out the pattern and they are shorting They're buying oil low, shorting it, selling it, and just making.
Wait, is Tim catching on? Is Tim actually catching on to what the plan is here? Or at least what, like, some of the plan is here, and people making money on the back end of this, knowing when Donald Trump's going to make a statement about peace, knowing when the market's going to go up, knowing when the oil price is going to go down, knowing when the bombs start flying, that the oil price is going to go back up. So you actually think that Tim Pool's kind of getting privy now to the fact that Donald Trump may be manipulating the markets, and people closely associated with Donald Trump may be making billions in the background off of these plays and shorting and investing into different moves and positions in the market here? Sounds like, I don't know. Is that what he's saying? I'm a little apprehensive to give Tim Pool any credit for seeing what's actually taking place in reality here.
Massive amounts of money, as we constantly hear about negotiations, then escalation of war. So this all starts when an Apache helicopter is reportedly shot down. Trump says they shot down an Apache. We're going to strike them. We hit their water reservoirs. This pisses them off. It sounds
again war crime, Tim. I think you might want to add that into the reporting to your viewers there. Again, you can't just blow past the fact that we're again hitting water treatment facilities when against the rules and regulations per international law. I'm sure there's something in there in the Geneva Conventions. It also states that the UN charters and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a bunch of places in which you could see and pull up some laws that detail you're not supposed to be going after the drinking water of civilians. Not only that, but definitely not the drinking water of civilians in the Middle East. Probably a big fucking problem. But, I digress. I'm sure that's not what Tim Pool is focused upon, obviously.
In all seriousness, it's a real escalation. I think what actually happened is Trump is negotiating. They're not. Kind of killed all their negotiators. But anyway, an Apache.
Well, Tim, guess what? A fucking negotiation doesn't happen unless you have two parties, dickhead. You can't have one person negotiating. Who's he negotiating with? What negotiating is taking place? He just said that I think Donald Trump's negotiating, but Iran's not doing it in good. Well, you can't. Who's he negotiating with? Himself at this point? You can't have one party in a negotiation, per the definitional use of negotiation.
It's shot down. Trump then bombs civilian infrastructure. Seriously bad stuff. Iran then is freaking out. Trump posts, next we're going to invade and seize their oil. And Iran says, stop, please stop. Now, I have questions. Why is it taking this long?
Where are you getting this information? That would be the first question. Like, where did it say that? Because it seems to me like Iran just retaliated the same way they've retaliated every single time that Donald Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu have either struck inside of Iran or somewhere in the Strait of Hormuz or anything like that. It seems like they put up, their basic retaliation against the U.S. bases, Gulf nations, other places, stuff like that. So I don't know where Tim's getting this information, but again, that's probably one of the bigger questions that could be asked. Where does Tim Pool get his information?
Why didn't Trump just go in and bomb this infrastructure that he was going to anyway? Why did we have to have an Apache shot down? I think Donald Trump said that we were going to invade.
But wouldn't you rather be asking yourself the question, how does Iran still have the capability to shoot down an Apache if you were Tim Pool? Right? Like after 100 and something days of being told by Donald Trump that Iran has no military capabilities, right? They have no radar systems. They have no command and control structure. They have no Navy. They got no Air Force. They have no leadership. After all those days of being told that, like, wouldn't you in the back of your mind be questioning, like, not what's coming from the strike and not why Donald Trump reacted to it, but how the fucking Iranians still have that capability in the first place? Or, again, why the majority of our targets seem to be in and around the Strait of Hormuz when we do go into, escalatory strikes, like why those targets are still there if we've apparently taken out 20,000 targets. Wouldn't the targets most closely associated and affiliated and surrounding the Strait of Hormuz be on the tops of the list for the United States military to completely take out, make useless, render useless, make so that they can't be built back, so that they just can't be, re-inhabited in a couple days? None of those things. Like, wouldn't that be tops on the list and the goals of the United States military if the Strait of Hormuz is under the United States control, as said by Pete Hegseth, as said by, Donald Trump in the Pentagon? If that's true, why are there still targets to be hit, Iranian targets to be hit in Qasem Island, Bandar Abbas, Sariq? I mean, I understand that they were hitting some targets deeper inside of Iran, but if you look at the strike pattern and where they were striking, it's not like the entirety of Iran, right? It's not like they're going after the entire command and control structure all over the country of Iran. It is very specific targets, mainly in and around the Strait of Hormuz, a couple obviously nearer to Tehran, but it's not a very widespread. It doesn't seem like they're very, able or willing to send their planes on a large basis over, just roaming over Iran. Seems like they're again specifically calculated on those targets in and around the Strait of Hormuz, which again begs the question: why the fuck are they still targets? Why are they still there? How can they still operate from there? Which again, Tim Pool is probably not smart enough, doesn't have enough logic going on in his brain to ask that question. But that's something I thought about.
Iran, to make it public to the American people, to show the Iranians it don't matter. They think their strategy has been Trump will lose in the midterms, he'll be constrained, then he will lose in 2028 so they can wait him out. I think
he can't win in 2028, asshole. He can't. There's no legal way for him to win in 2028. There's no running again. That's it, motherfucker. That's it. He's done. That's it. He can lose as the sitting president of the United States, as the leader of the Republican Party. He could definitely lose rhetorically in a way in the midterms, but he certainly can't fucking lose in 2028. I can assure you. That's it. It's done, buddy. Fuck no. I mean, you'll have some people out there, lots of people out there with pitchforks and some other things, if that takes place. But, there's no losing for Trump in 2028. I can't stand when they even put it like that, like he's going to be able to run again. Nope, that's it. Done.
Now it's become patently obvious to anybody with surface level understanding of American politics. Yeah, actually, the Republicans are doing really well for procedural reasons. The Iranians probably got better intelligence than we do against ourselves. I don't mean the government. I mean the people of the United States. The Iranians probably understand full well what's going to happen in the midterms. They are planning for it militarily.
Of course they do. Oh, my God. Holy shit. Unfucking believable. Like, they really do think that the Iranians are just like, I don't know, apes. Like, they're fucking cavemen. You know what I mean? Like they're out there banging fucking rocks and sticks together, trying to create fire. And, they must be taking down Apache helicopters by throwing stones. You know what I mean? It's like, of course they have good intelligence. Of course they understand the ramifications in the political, the political aspirations of Republicans and what would go to help and affect those political aspirations going forward. Of course they're trying to outlast the United States, because the closer we get to midterms, the more pressure will be put on, if not Donald Trump, because he doesn't give a shit, but the broader Republican Party, obviously, that want to keep their job, right? So that's what the calculation has been. So Tim's just like all of a sudden recognizing that, wow, they have a military and they have intelligence, and maybe they might be smart enough to think that, there might be some political calculations to be made here in the United States the closer we get to midterm elections. Like, Jesus Christ, to see him like realize that and recognize that in real time was worth this 3 minutes at least.
And I believe they've considered Watson v. RNC, which I've talked about. I think they know Trump is going to win this one. But I wonder, maybe I'm wrong about
everything you just said, and somehow the conclusion you come to is that the Iranians know that Trump's going to win this. And again, I don't know if he's referring to the war there or midterms, but neither one of them look like they're going in his favor. You know what I mean? He looks to be 0 for 2 on that. But this again is the idiot that said Donald Trump was going to sweep, all of the states in the United States. What was that in the 20? Was that the 20? I forget which one that was. Was it the 2020 election on that one? But Jesus Christ, there's Tim. But surprisingly or unsurprisingly, Tim's not the only one. But this is, like I said, a 21-minute video, and I don't think what's he actually utilized from this clip. I'm not sure if he says anything.
We at Timcast Hour, we have not covered this as a principal story, because I guarantee you, if I had to put money down at a sports book on war, I'd be willing to bet there is no deal. There is no deal. I'd be willing to bet it's not going to happen. Let's just talk about the news. I'm going to keep this one short, largely because I don't like talking about this, because Trump is yo-yoing. Okay. I'm pushing this as close to publishing as I can, because I know the news.
Wow. So that's Tim Pool right there, actually admitting to everybody that he doesn't like reporting on this stuff because Donald Trump's an idiot. right? Because of how dumb this makes the United States look, because of how much Donald Trump has lied in the past, because of how inconsistent not only what Donald Trump says is compared to reality, but he just literally says it out loud to his fans. They're like, yeah, this isn't something that we've been normally reporting on because we know it's all bullshit, but the president consistently says it. But, we don't want to sit here and harp on the president too much. You can't make bad videos about the Fuhrer. You won't like that too much. So we've just been staying away from this. Listen.
It was like, we have a deal, the deal will be signed, and then no deal happened. And I'm at the point where I'm just like, okay, guys, we at Timcast, we have not covered this as a principal story, because I guarantee you, if I had to put money down at a sports book on war, I'd be willing to bet there is no deal. There is no deal. I'd be willing to bet it's not going to happen. Let's just talk about.
So because he knows that the United States is being lied to, the world's being lied to by Donald Trump and the White House, he's just not been reporting on it, right? He's just not going to say anything. He doesn't want to have to tell his viewers how many times Donald Trump's been wrong or just outright lying in this situation. Like, that's a pretty stock admission from somebody that's supposed to be giving you the straight news, or tells his audience he's giving them the straight news as like an independent journalist, right? Like a guy that just sits on the fence. He's not a righty. He's not a lefty. He just kind of calls balls and strikes as he sees them. Again, that's what Tim Pool would love to have you believe. Obviously, we know better. But to have him sit there and say, yep, well, Donald Trump's an idiot. He's lying to you every single day. Everything that he says is going to happen never fucking happens. So we just don't report it here on Timcast is, I don't know, it's something that I would never be able to outright admit on the show. I wouldn't have the ball. So I guess he deserves a little bit of credit in that regard. But same thing being announced here by Benny Johnson. And I know you guys, to a certain degree, are sick of Benny Johnson, and I apologize, but we don't have to get into much of this, if any at all. But I just want to show you that they're kind of both reporting on the same shit, or suggesting the same shit. He says Trump announces American land invasion of Iran. We're taking the oil. And again, just broadly just out there propagandizing Donald Trump's Truth Social post, everything that he says on Fox News. No call out, right? No secondary research. No pinning that against other outlets and what other outlets are saying. No pinning that against what the Iranians are saying, the spokespeople, the IRGC, Aragchi, not any of them. None of those things will be shown here on Benny Johnson's show. And like I said, we don't have to dive into too much of it. He just kind of talks about the willingness, and obviously Donald Trump's post where he said he's going to go into Carg Island, and then just goes on to say apparently that's what's going to happen and that we've won the war. I don't know how we could also be talking about an invasion and also the fact that the war is over and we've won. But I just wanted to show you guys that was the reporting. I'll dive into it just a minute. Just give me a minute of this bullshit to call out.
Island and other oil infrastructure points, and assume total control of their oil and gas markets. The only thing keeping them alive, attention to this matter system, right? Because you continue to keep all of these tankers. I mean, goodness gracious, look at the backup here in the Strait of Hormuz. This is the
Whoa! I thought it was open. I thought Donald Trump announced that like ridiculously successful mission that he was getting all of these oil tankers out in the middle of the night. There shouldn't be a backup. Not only shouldn't there be a backup, but, Donald Trump said that mission was successful. Also, Pete Hegseth said that we have total and full and complete control over the Strait of Hormuz. So why is there still a backup, Benny? I'm curious. Why is that still backed up?
Persian Gulf right here. Here's the Strait of Hormuz. I guess there's some ships that are moving. But these big old tankers, right? Some of them have been stuck now for months in the Persian Gulf. And then other tankers, obviously.
Why is that?
Sequestered out.
Why have they been stuck there, Benny? Why haven't they been able to reach their destination? Can you just explain that one more again to your audience? Just one more again.
Outside in the Gulf of Oman, unable to move. I guess you could argue that there's plenty of traffic rolling through right here and rolling through over here.
You know where that right here just was that he just pointed out? So this is the Red Sea. This is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait that he's talking about right here. So that's what he's like relying upon for his audience to be like, well, I guess there's still traffic happening. Well, guess what? If this like so-called 39th, 40th deal falls apart, just like the rest of them fall apart, and we go back to war, and Iran decides to announce to close the Bab el-Mandeb, well, you can kiss fucking all of that shipping goodbye as well. Right. So everything that he's now showing here right in front of you, not the top one. The top one is the Strait of Hormuz. The bottom one here that you can see where all the shipping traffic is going through is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. On the lower part of the screen, obviously into the Red Sea, and then obviously the Suez Canal up here as well.
Right here, and rolling through over here into the Gulf of America. It's actually become a super highway of tankers like we've never seen before. It's all well and good, but obviously this has been a disruption, and I'm not going to argue somehow that like $4 or $5 gas is a good thing for America. It's not, and I don't like it.
How could you? How the fuck could you? I mean, you look like an asshole already enough consistently defending this war and, wanting it to see it keep going, apparently. But if you went out there and said that $4.50 gas and $4.10, $4.20 gas is okay, you'd be strung up in the city center. You know what I mean? Like, people would hang you by the pike.
And I want it to end. And maybe the best way for it to end is for there to be overwhelming and complete and total force of nature destruction of Iran's capacities.
So he doesn't believe there's a deal behind the scenes. He doesn't believe that Donald Trump's capable of doing a deal, right? He doesn't believe that. If he did believe that, he wouldn't be saying that the only way that they could possibly achieve victory or pry victory out of the fucking jaws of defeat here is to go on there and just militarily wipe Iran out. Right? Wipe out Qasem Island, wipe out the IRGC like they've said they've already done. Go on there and literally hit all of their infrastructure, their water, their bridges, everything. Like, that's what he wants to see happen. This warmonger piece of shit. So he doesn't believe, as you can tell by his reporting, that he thinks that any deal is done or being close to being done behind behind closed doors, or else he wouldn't be saying that like outright military action and like annihilation is kind of like the only route that he could see to victory.
To create oil, make oil, or to engage in the economy at all. President Trump has done what I believe to be a masterstroke in going to China and negotiating the Chinese away.
Right, that's enough of him. But like I said, he's once again trying to push for more war. And it just, like I said, gives you confidence, or shows you the lack of confidence, is better said, I should say, in that Benny Johnson has in Donald Trump to actually come out of this with the deal. And he still says that basically the only route that he says to get out of this is the annihilation of the Iranian military and just total overall like destruction on Qasem Island and stuff. But all right, let me see if I can throw this on your screen as well, because we got a couple updates coming here from I want to say the broader plan that we've been seeing by the Ukrainians here, obviously in the southern part of their country, focusing heavily on Crimea. Before that, we have Professor here is going to give us a few updates. He says Crimea is becoming a problem Russia can't ignore. And then we have that as well. Let me show you. Let me show you this first. Let me throw this on your screen first, because I got a kick out of this. This was posted by Saint Javelin, right? And, anybody that's watched the show for any length of time now knows that we regularly cover what's going on in Ukraine. Typically at the end of every show, we'll be going over either frontline movements, recent strikes by Ukraine into Russia. Obviously, we have to report on the bad things as well, which I think there is some not so great news to come out of the front lines that we're reporting on in just a couple videos. So just to prove my point, I think there's been some Russian movements in and around Konstantinivka. So that's something obviously we got to report on. But we try to keep everybody as up to speed and up to date as possible as to what's going on in Ukraine. But thank you to everybody that supports and comes in and watches the show, especially for that. But I wanted to throw this on the screen because this is fucking. You've obviously heard us talk about the Ukrainians going after the land bridge into Crimea. We've talked, since the beginning of the war, what a huge target the Kerch Bridge is. But more recently, the uptick in Ukrainian drone usage, and obviously going after the transportation, the trucks, and the resupply vehicles of the Russian military getting into Crimea. Well, it's gotten to a certain extent, and it's gotten so bad for the Russians that they've now starting to disguise their military trucks. So this looks to be a Russian fuel tanker, right? Disguised as just some regular civilian, I don't know, any like farm vehicle type of truck that you would see. But what they don't realize is this is going to make it a lot more difficult for actual civilians to now travel on this road. Because once the Ukrainians see this and they see that the Russians are making their trucks to look like civilian trucks and just like I'll play the clip here, but look at like the wood they have surrounding the fuel. Check this out. So he's reporting that, and supposedly that is a Russian fuel tanker just with wood surrounding it to make it look like, just like a random, average civilian farm truck, industry truck, whatever it may be delivering or being utilized for, whatever. But something that you wouldn't immediately look at and be like, okay, that's a fuel tanker going to help the Russian war efforts. But, once the Ukrainians get a hold of this, and I'm sure they already have, right? I mean, if I'm seeing it, they definitely fucking saw it. They're going to start targeting that type of thing. And that's going to make it more difficult for the actual civilians in the area to utilize this road, to use this road, because they're going to become targets too. Right. So the Ukrainians are just going to, anything that starts looking like this, if the Russians are going to try to fucking disguise their trucks, anything that looks remotely similar to this, I'm sure the Ukrainians are going to start striking. And that's, going to lead to, I'm sure, certain instances in which, it's going to be an actual civilian vehicle and not a Russian vehicle. And it's unfortunate, but that's kind of the position that the Russians are thrusting the civilians in that area into by utilizing this tactic. You can see, look at how poorly done it is too, right? The wood's already fallen off the back. You can see that the very last piece of wood already dangling. Looks like one piece of wood already fell out from the higher up here on the back. It just got one strap going diagonally to hold the things together. It's a piss poor attempt, right? It's fucking crazy. But you can see the guy that's kind of doing the commentary on it. Military supply convoy. Look, there it is. I'll play it one more time. He's calling him clown. So it says, there it is, handsome. Look how they disguised it. He says, military supply convoy. Look, there it is. Clowns, he calls them. And then as St. Javelin put here, it says, I hate to say this, but everything is going exactly according to plan. No one in modern history has filled their pants quite as spectacularly as Putin with his 3-day military operation. So I figured we'd get a kick out of looking at that, and the lengths that the Russians are now trying to go to get the resupply vehicles through and down into Crimea. But here's just a little bit of an update from the professor about the the Ukrainians' overall plan, and then we have a couple more videos along the same lines. We have this Sun exclusive as well, which details a little bit of the Russian movements in and around Konstantinivka. So stay tuned for that. And then I have one more. This one here from Georgie at Ukraine Matters. And he's talking about just how the broader Ukraine focus on Crimea is becoming a little bit more clear, like what the overall campaign is trying to do, what the goals are, and how well they're being able to utilize that and put it into practice. So we have that coming up as well. So stick with me. Here's the professor just on a couple updates in and around Crimea as well. Slava Ukraina, Heroyam Slava. I appreciate you guys once again, everybody contributing to the Help 99 NAFO 69 Sniffer Brigade campaign. Again, over 11,000 euros in less than 2 weeks. I'm over the moon. It's put a gigantic smile on my face, and I couldn't be more grateful and appreciative of this community and others that are responsible for contributing to that. So thank you guys so much. And like I said, Slava Ukraina.
It's Friday, June 12th, 2026. Crimea is being...
I'm going to grab a quick drink while that's playing, and I'll be right back.
...systematically cut off. The Russians weren't expecting this. They thought once they had gathered their strength and moved the front line where it is, the Ukrainians couldn't possibly do, exactly what the Ukrainians are doing right now. Let's look at what's going on here. Let's start here. Logistics lockdown. That's the term that the Ukrainians are using. The logistics lockdown in action in occupied Luhansk Oblast. Ukraine's 3rd Army Corps drones swept across occupied Luhansk Oblast, burning Russian logistics hubs, troop trucks, fuel supplies, Starobilsk, Adar, Nova Adar, and a number of other places that I have a hard time pronouncing. But that's what they call this, the logistics lockdown. And it's going all the way down to the highway. The priests are blessing the highway from drones.
All right,
now.
I'm back.
Okay. Russian priests blessed the R-280 highway in Russia before an attack by Ukrainian drones. So far, the desired divine intervention has not materialized, and Ukrainians have increased their aerial surveillance of the highway.
What did it say there on the bottom? Hold on, let me go back real quick. I just want to see. In recent days, Ukrainian drones have attacked and severely damaged 2 key bridges connecting the Russian-occupied mainland and southern Ukraine with the Crimean Peninsula. This forces the Russian occupiers to take a 2-hour longer route to supply the island, which we discussed on yesterday's show as well.
Ukrainians have increased their aerial surveillance of the highway. So what highway are we talking about? This is the highway. It's from Rostov down to Mariupol and through here all the way down to, it would have gone to this bridge, but that bridge has been put out of commission. And so they reroute, and this bridge is now put out of commission, as are a couple of others. And I'll show you that along the way. Okay. Putin's road, this just came out in NBC News 5 hours ago. Putin's road to ruin, Ukraine hits key Russian supply line with new drone campaign. NBC is writing Putin's road to ruin. Yeah, how about that? Okay, so the 390-mile stretch known as the R280 Novorossiysk.
Is that the same one that we were looking at yesterday, guys? Let me go real quick. Let me just take you real quick here. Was that the same one? He said, what was that? The 380, he said? Real quick, let me go back. He said it was the R280. All right, let me look for that one. Throw this on your screen. And go into Europe. Where are we? Where are we? Move faster. Here's Russia, which means Ukraine will be down here somewhere, right here. I'm just curious what that 280 is. Let me switch the road map. Might be a little better. I'm just curious if it was the same ones that we were looking at yesterday. If so, I'll just jump right back into it. So this one is the E97. That's the one we were looking at. That says H05. Is the 380 this is the one like outside of there? Maybe it's this one. Does it tell me? Is it going to tell me? Can you tell me? That says the M14. Here's the E105. So I'm just looking for the exact highway that he's talking about. That is a 390-mile stretch. Here's the E105, goes into here. E97, M18, M17. I don't know, but these were this is where exactly where we were talking about as far as the bridges, right? Here's the Chongar Bridge, excuse me, in the Chongar Strait that we were talking about yesterday. That's on the M18. So I'm just not quite sure exactly what he's talking about as far as that specific highway, but maybe it's one of these highways just listed or known as something else numerically as far as he's speaking about. But all right, I'll jump back. I digress. My apologies.
That's New Russia, is a crucial route for supplying Russian forces on the southern battlefields, as well as keeping the occupied territory supplied with food and fuel. But in recent weeks, the route has been snarled by Ukrainian attacks on vehicles carrying critical supplies, triggering a growing crisis on the tourism-dependent peninsula. I hadn't even thought about it until I read that line, but yeah, it's like Florida being cut off. Florida is totally dependent on tourism. Like their state budget doesn't even have an income tax or state income tax, and the property tax is comparable or mild compared to whichever other state you're coming from. So they're dependent on tourism. Same thing with Crimea, highly dependent on tourism. So, and if they're out of gas and tourists can't get gas or actually come there because of that, now that's just part of this. They also have all these strikes that are happening on this highway, and this is just some of them. Let's look at what's going on. Russia had partially rerouted traffic to Crimea through Armyansk after the Chonar strikes. The Chonar was the first bridge, and it's this one over here on the left.
So I'm from what I'm getting from what he's saying, it looks like the bridge that I was telling you guys about yesterday. It looks like the Ukrainians hit that one, if I'm getting the information correctly, because that secondary location is awful friggin' close to where we were looking at yesterday. I believe it was in Jake Bro's video. Remember yesterday, Jake Bro was speaking about that that reservoir that looked like it had water in it, but it just hadn't been updated on Google Maps in a while, and that reservoir had run dry. Well, that's right in Armyansk, exactly where I was talking about. So let me throw this back on your screen. We'll do Armyansk specifically. Right, and I'll show you that exact point. Armyansk, which is down here, this one. Nope, that ain't it. Oh, here it is right here. Gotcha. I gotcha. So here's Armyansk, and here's the bridge that we were talking about. I'll go back to the satellite view so it looks a little bit more clear to you guys. Right here. So this is the bridge that we were talking about yesterday that Jake Bro said that it looks like there's water here, right? Looks like it's going over water, but if you go down just a little bit, see that little switch? See this little switch in the graphics? And it looks like it's dry. I think that is the more updated version. So right here where you're looking at, it looks like that same, I don't know, canal, water, riverway type of thing that goes up to the Novikakhovka Dam. That looks like it's dry, and it's been dry for quite some time. So it looks like, if I'm getting this information correctly, and like I said, we're just kind of sifting through this at the same time, it looks like he's speaking about here, that same point. So you can see here the Chonar Bridge. We talked about that. And then in Armyansk, there's only one point that I could see in which the Ukrainians would even have, not the ability, but the need to strike. I don't think there's another one unless, of course, like I said, this is the only other one that I see. Looks like this is also some sort of bridge that they could utilize. So it's got to be one of those two. It's got to be one of those two. So that's Armyansk, and then obviously over here is the Chonar. So just to kind of show you what exactly we're talking about and how we were just speaking about that yesterday. And apparently it looks like the Ukrainians have recognized the importance of that and decided to strike that bridge as well. Oh, you know what I should do is put this back on the screen because that's my apologies. All right.
On the left.
So that's what it's saying. Let me read that. It says Russia has partially rerouted traffic to Crimea through Armyansk after Chonar strikes. Overnight, Ukrainian drones hit 4 bridges along that very corridor. All 3 Crimea choke points point now to new damage in 4 days. So let's see here. Is it given the exact location of that? So it says Armyansk. So that's one. I can't tell. It's tough to tell by this post. It's tough to tell by this post. There's 2 specific places circled. One does encompass this one right here, that smallest circle that you can see does encompass that Armyansk bridge that we were looking at. But that second circle up a little bit more north, I don't know what that involves or which one. If they're detailing a strike on that one, maybe he talks about it more.
Strikes. The Chonar was the first bridge, and it's this one over here on the left, or sorry, on the right. And then they had to reroute all the way around to here in order to get it. And then they hit that bridge as well. So yeah, Ukrainian drone forces are methodically grinding down bridges connecting the Russian-occupied parts of Kherson with the occupied peninsula.
Yeah, it says right here. Look at right here. Look at the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph. Or we'll start with the third one. It says in Henichesk, the situation is similar. While the bridge is not completely closed, it has been severely damaged and only one lane can be used. It is questionable if the damaged bridge can carry heavy-duty vehicles such as trucks and tankers. 4th paragraph says the bridge in Armyansk was hit by several drones and is impassable for cars and trucks. Additionally, the bridge near Stavki, north of Armyansk, has also been struck. The extent of the damage has not yet been determined. So again, taking Tendar usually does pretty good reporting, which is, I'm assuming, why the professor utilizes that reporting. Does look like, in fact, that this bridge here, let's take a look one more time. Looks like this bridge, in fact, was targeted by the Ukrainians. And we were just talking about this yesterday, which is wild. Again, showing you how quickly the Ukrainians act on this information when they know that they have a choke point. You can look here and see kind of on a broader basis what was going on. So just in this general vicinity is where the other bridge was. Here's Chonar. So this is where the bridge was. So instead of the Russians be able to come down here and get into Crimea, they were having to reroute more north up here and take their, take a longer path down into Armyansk. So kind of rerunning like this. Do I have the ability to draw on this? See, it'd be really easy if I could. I don't think they give you one. I think on the other one I can, but not on this one for some reason. I can get a ruler. I can get an analyze, slope, contour, shape, cut, and fill. No, I just want to draw. That's all I want to do. Ask Google to incite you. So anyway, but you guys get the picture. Instead of coming straight down the coastline, basically like this, they were forced to kind of take a longer route and go into Armyansk. Now that bridge in Armyansk seems to be attacked. And they also said that there was another one up here in Stavki. So it looks like this is the one right here. This one right here. So it looks like this bridge was attacked in Stavki by the Ukrainians. And then further on down the canal, you have the one that was in Armyansk right here as well. So again, just to detail the exact positions of the Ukrainian strikes. And, I think, like I said, I get a great benefit out of seeing it on the map rather than just seeing it on a Twitter post. So hopefully, it's a benefit to some of you guys to see it on the map. So to see the routes in which the Russians have to travel, how much distance they have to cover if, in fact, they can't use the Chonar Bridge, which is obviously down here, right in this general vicinity. But you know what I mean? So it makes it a lot easier for me to be able to visually, to visualize what's taking place on the front. So I'll go back into the professor's video here.
Of Crimea. The bridge in Chonar has already been critically hit. The Russians moved pontoon bridges to bypass it, but Ukrainians continue to strike this area. So overall, the development is quite clear. Ukrainians are increasingly making all the movement for logistics impossible. I think that's the greater goal here. The list only the current state, and will certainly get worse for the Russian invasion.
So it says, with the Kerch Bridge being diminished since the strike some years ago and all the major ferries destroyed, relative isolation of Russian-occupied Crimea is a new reality. And I think they're They're pretty spot on as far as at least the percentage of kind of supplies and resupply and troop movements that they could cut off here. You know what I mean? So it's obviously going to be a huge problem to the Russians right now living on Crimea, and obviously the Russian military that needs those resupplies to continue doing whatever the fuck they're doing.
This is the new reality. This is what they're facing. So here are the bridges here, and the bridges over here are just making it
a very calculated effort, right? I think this is becoming very clear. The strikes that the Ukrainians are undertaking, what they're trying to strike, the bridges, exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to cut off Crimea. Okay, they're trying to cut off the resupply. They're trying to isolate Crimea. And again, we'll look at this. Maybe it's probably a good time to jump into this one as well. We'll finish off with the Sun, and I'll dive into this one from Yorgi from Ukraine Matters, because I think he does a pretty good job at detailing this exact same thing. You know, the broader efforts, the broader general plan by the Ukrainians is not just to cut off Crimea, utilizing the drones, not just utilizing and taking out the bridges and obviously the land bridge and the Kerch bridge, but also to cut off an area more north, so that the Russian military can help and come to the resupply and come to counterattack any offensive that will be seen down there, or any movements or any, again, abilities that the Ukrainians have to cut off the resupply to Crimea. But I think Georgie here from Ukraine Matters does a pretty good job at showing us on the map, at least, kind of a visual, like I said, visual representation of what the Ukrainians are trying to do. So stick with me, hit that like button. I appreciate you guys. My name is Brian. This is the Blunt Politics Podcast, and we're just covering a little bit of what's taking place in Ukraine right now, focused more on the effects on Crimea here.
2026 is becoming very quickly a very nasty year for the Russian armed forces. All of their advances on the front line has pretty much stalled. And more than that, Ukraine has actually reported that in the month of May, they regained more territory than lost. So suddenly, Russia advancing, but it is Ukraine that is taking the initiative and regaining their territory. More than that, Russian military bloggers are...
How fucking cool is that? Cat's got his own hat, got his own military fatigue hat. Goddamn.
Now crying wolf and stating that potentially Ukrainians are preparing for something big. Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. I made a video where I talked about how this war could end. However, 2026 truly threw a wrench in all of my calculations.
You guys like that cat? Hold on, I'll go back. I'll give you another look. I can always appease the audience. There you go. I mean, tell me. I think he's even got like the Ukraine flag on there. Like, I mean, he's representing. I'd probably trust this cat in a fight more than I'd trust any Republican in our country. I know that much. I can tell you that much. But yeah, just to kind of go back and show you guys that, the cat of war there.
6 truly threw a wrench in all of my calculations. And in reality, Ukraine has opened new possibilities for this war to end. This will be the first video in the series in which I will analyze how Ukraine actually can absolutely win this war in 2026. Today, we're going to be talking at the military victory that Ukraine can achieve. Let's start by looking at the claim, and then we're going to transition into the data points to see whether or not the data supports that claim. And the claim is very simple. Ukraine has a victory plan. I'm talking about the military victory plan. Ukraine even had it before in 2022, 2023 as well. It's just in 2023, they didn't have the resources to execute it. Arguably now, they have it, those resources. The plan is very simple, which is to cut out the Crimea by trying to cut out the land corridor to Crimea and then take out the bridge to Crimea.
So again, 2 great points that I think he's making here, right? So obviously we know about the efforts to try to go after Crimea, to, inhibit the resupply, to do anything you possibly can to make it difficult for the Russians to survive on Crimea. But that secondary line that he drew, that looks kind of like something else. But in between Melitopol and Mariupol, that's another huge part of this that the Ukrainian military will, have to achieve if in fact they want to not only gain control over Crimea or do substantial damage to the Russians on Crimea, but to continue doing that, we'll have to be cutting off the land portion as well. And I'm not just talking about to the resupply vehicles going from, Mariupol to Melitopol. We're talking about in that general vicinity, right? There's going to have to be some sort of cutoff. There's going to have to be some sort of I would say, military offensive by the Ukrainians to try to get some gap in there to create a corridor, not just with drones, but with troops as well. If, in fact, I think their goals are to expend that much resources, expend that much energy on going after Crimea in the southern portion of Ukraine. But I think that's also something that is, wise for Georgie to point out. It's not just drones taking out the resupply vehicles going into Crimea and then hitting, targets in Crimea. There has to be some sort of cutoff between the Russian military and obviously getting into anywhere near the Crimea to make sure that they're not consistently fighting against the Ukrainians in the area that have, the drone teams and stuff that are targeting the resupply vehicles. All of those things come into play again if you let the Russian military creep closer and closer down into that area, even if, again, that the roads are closed, it's going to be a big problem. So you'd have to create a corridor, at least in theory, you'd like to be able to do that.
Which a significant portion of the Russian forces get encircled and really slow.
Again, I don't know if you can see my mouse on the screen, but this is the portion that I was talking about right here. Not necessarily that specific in the lines that he drew, the shape or anything like that, but he is right, in fact, that, there should be a substantial military push or try to cut off the rest of the Russian military from that area, that general vicinity.
Fully squeezed out and defeated. Why this would work, and this is where the claim is that Putin is a military dictator. He transitioned from just being a dictator in Russia to now being a military dictator. So everything is dependent on his success in the war. And for Russia, there is a very clear victory path for their victory. Russia can claim victory if they capture Kyiv. That is enough for Putin. But there is also a defeat point. If Putin loses Crimea to Ukrainians, that is it. That is when whatever he does later on, trying to maybe recapture or trying to portray that he's.
I always feel bad that I'm like right in front of their face. Sometimes it's uncanny how all the videos that I play, they all seem to have themselves on the same side of the screen. I feel bad when I cover their their face, because you're utilizing their videos and their content, and I feel bad that I sit right in front of them the whole time.
During Donetsk, Luhansk, none of this will work. Losing Crimea is pretty much the end of Putin. Our first data point will be addressing why this plan can work at all. And the answer is very simple, because it happened before. It happened in Kherson, the big green thing that you see here, where Ukrainians actually isolated Russia due to geographical conditions by destroying a couple of bridges across the river and then starving out Russians until they were forced to flee. And the same can happen right now. Firstly, there is a lot of things that are happening already trying to soften up Russians for a potential Ukrainian attack. This is happening in the southern area of Ukraine, specifically across the land bridge. I'm not going to go too much into details for specific activities that Ukraine is doing. I would recommend maybe watching some friend of the channel like Underpuck Nielsen. He goes in depth about what Ukraine is doing. We're going to approach this from why this is working and what specifically.
I don't think it's really wise to even try to report on exactly what to do or to speculate on that. Obviously, there's a reason in which why, military bloggers typically wait 24 hours at least before trying to report on something like that, unless it's overly substantial and being reported on by the mainstream media. But you don't want to give away positions. You don't want to give away troop movements. You never know who's watching, as small as these channels are. You don't want to give away any aspect of that. But let me just see if I can pull up the deep state map real quick. And it might be easier to kind of show just a little bit, on a general basis, like I said, of what's taking place here, because this is the map, the area that we're looking at, and this kind of gives the ability to draw. Let me see this real quick. So just from what we're talking about, this is kind of the overall route that they're having to take, the Russians, right? So basically what happened by taking out the bridge here, by striking the bridge here, they forced the Russians to have to go up and around this way and come basically down into here. But what happened is the Ukrainians had struck the bridge here and somewhere, let's say, in this general vicinity. So they're trying to block off in totality what they call the land bridge here, the Kerch Bridge being down in this general vicinity down here. so that they have to obviously figure out some other way or just cut off Crimea in general so that they can continue their strikes. But also what we were talking about is the necessity to try to I don't know if it's general in this general vicinity, what they'll try to do, but somewhere up in here, try to create this corridor, try to create this, as big of a stretch as humanly possible to try to cut off the general, the military up here with the military down here, and then obviously the military in Crimea. You understand? That kind of makes sense. You understand? So that's kind of what seems to be the broader plan of the Ukrainians as far as the southern portion, right? As far as Crimea and the southern portion of their country, right? We'll get into this, the Sun video, which is detailing in and around Zaporizhia that the Russians are having some successes. Was it? Excuse me, I believe it was Konstantinivka. My apologies on that one. I think we'll be reporting on this, so you can see the Russians encroaching on several sides here, as reported in the deep state map. You can see here from Berostok, Ivanopilia, and up here in Molocharka. So they're trying to encircle basically Konstantinivka. So like I said, it's not just important to report on the successes of the Ukrainian military, but also the realities of what's taking place on the front lines, which we'll get into in just a minute with this the Sun update that we'll be getting into. So just a couple more minutes of Georgie, and then we'll get into the Sun, and then I'll let you guys go for the day. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Hit that like button if you could.
It changed. To understand this, we need to understand that Russian tactics haven't really changed since they started the war. Yes, they've adapted how they are attacking Ukraine in the changing environment, but general principles stay the same. The key to victory over Russians in the way that Ukraine wants this is logistics. Logistics of Russians have been under pressure for a while now. Let's look at the full supply chain for the Russians, because surprisingly, the supply chain really hasn't improved for Russians. It is still the same. And most of it depends on, well, trains. Trains are the first and probably the most important step for the Russians. Trains deliver supplies to large stockpiles. From these large stockpiles, Russia then loads a lot of different trucks and armored vehicles that are taking them closer to the front line, somewhere around.
I appreciate somebody who has less artistic ability than I do trying to utilize their artistic ability to show us what's going on. I will. For somebody that just utilized the drawing, the drawing aspect on these maps, I have to, I'll take one on the chin. I'll take one on the chin too. But I think that's a truck. Oh, I'm blocking it, of course. I moved myself. No, I'm blocking his drawings, for Christ's sakes.
100 kilometers at this point. And after they get to these smaller stockpiles closer to the front line, then either smaller vehicles or Russians on their feet or motorcycles are then.
So that is just a very, I would say, rough sketch, rough idea of the Russian supply from trains to bigger stockpiles onto trucks, down to smaller stockpiles, from the smaller stockpiles down by vehicles and, ATVs, whatever they can do to get it to the frontline troops. So he's just given like a general breakdown of what the Russian resupply looks like on an on an overarching basis, I should say. But let's see if I can break into this one real quick, because like I said, this gives a little bit about Crimea as well, but also a little bit about Konstantinivka, which again, we need to continuously be up to speed on. Like I said, it's not just the good things that we have to report on, but also, anything, that's taking place within reality. So appreciate you guys. This is, like I said, the Sun exclusive. I believe this is Jeremy doing his again. What's the guy's last name? I forget it every time. His name is Jerome Starkey. My apologies. Here we go.
Ukraine is gaining a death grip on Russian routes into Crimea, and a head of Putin's missile directorate has been killed by a car bomb in Moscow. But Russia is slowly enveloping Konstantinivka at the southern edge of Ukraine's fortress belt. Kharkiv again. My name is Jerome Starkey. I'm the defense editor of the Sun newspaper, and this is Frontline, your weekly roundup of the most important news from the war in Ukraine. I'm back from a 3-week absence, and thank you to Colonel Philip Ingram for standing in, and thank you to all of you for watching, and indeed some of you for asking about my whereabouts while I've been away. I was just on holiday, but thank you for noticing. I hope the FSB doesn't pay quite so much attention. We'll start with the bridges into Crimea. Russian and Ukrainian officials have confirmed a series of strikes over the course of the last week, hitting 3 groups of bridges that connect occupied Kherson to the Crimean Peninsula, occupied Crimea. I'm going to start east to west. There are 3 bridges over the North Crimea Canal. They are the Stavky, the Myrna, and the Armyansk Bridge. These connect main.
I mean, I feel good about my reporting. Again, we're just showing you, this is exactly what the sun is showing you, is exactly what I just showed you on the map. These are the exact same 3 bridges that we went over on Armyansk, and then the ones here up to the north. So again, there is some insight, some reason, some benefit to watching this channel. Again, if you're involved in keeping up to speed on what's going on in Ukraine or, domestic policy, hopefully you find some benefit in this. But, seeing things that we just actively reported on, being reported on in the sun, and I hadn't seen a second of this. I always try to dive into these things with you guys. So, I just little pat on the back. That's all. A little pat on the back.
Now, the Stavky, the Myrna, and the Armyansk Bridge. These connect main and small roads across this canal, a significantly important route between these 2 territories. Myrna, the most northern, Stavky in the middle, and the Armyansk further south. Armyansk, the largest and most significant of those. Those were hit on the night of June 10th. Earlier in the week, around the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th of June, the Chonhar Bridge. This is what this goes over sort of flooded.
This is the first one that was struck. So this was the original strike that we were talking about. And then from this strike, we were talking about how the other bridges, remember we were talking about Jake Bro's video and people were commenting on his video. Yeah, there's these other bridges as well. Well, Ukraine knew about them and struck them not long after we were talking about the necessity and the need for doing so.
Marshlands, estuarine marshlands, where the Black Sea comes into the top of the Crimean Peninsula. That was hit. This confirmed by Vladimir Soldo, the governor of occupied Crimea. And then on June 10th, the easternmost bridge, the Henichensk, was hit. Now that connects Kherson to a very thin spit that runs down the northeastern flank of Crimea. Combined, this is really significant because some of those strikes have actually hit Russian military convoys whilst they've been on the bridges, but it's holding those routes at risk. And those routes have become increasingly important to Russia because of the ongoing campaign that we've talked about, choking the roads on the land bridge. That's the strip of occupied Ukraine that runs from Mariupol in the east through to Berdyansk. And Russian forces have been using that to supply their forces in places like Orehiv and further west in Kherson on the southern edge of the Dnipro River. As a result of those earlier strikes hitting the land bridge, making that a dangerous route, Russian forces have diverted supplies. They've tried to reach those troops by sending up weapons, men, material, and fuel from the Crimean Peninsula into Kherson. And now those routes are at risk as well.
So again, I was kind of in the way, but you can see he's depicting the Kerch Bridge being used.
What does that mean for Russia? Well, reports this week that their troops are withdrawing from the Kinburn Spit. Kinburn is on the southern edge of are at risk as well.
Right there. So he's talking about how basically the northern routes have been so heavily hit and they've been so heavily hampered by Ukrainian drones that they're starting to push more across the Kerch Bridge, in that kind of route into Crimea, which again is going to bring that into, the targeting frame is going to bring that into, the sights of the Ukrainian drone teams, which is going to utilize, I'm sure, and hopefully, in some pretty short order, taking out that Kerch Bridge, if in fact it does become the one and only route that the Russians are able to utilize to get into Crimea, right? So again, I just wanted to hop out of the way and let him show you that that's kind of the route that they're forced to now be using, where that northern route is, becoming more and more difficult to utilize.
For Russia, well, reports this week that their troops are withdrawing from the Kinburn Spit. Kinburn is on the southern edge of the Dnipro River where it flows into the Black Sea. This is an area that has been contested in the past. Ukraine has tried to land on the Spit. They've hit Russian forces training on the Spit. It's quite an isolated position, so understandable given these logistics concerns that Russian forces might feel exposed there. The context of these strikes is that in the summer of 2023, the main objective of Ukraine's summer counteroffensive was to push south through Zaporizhia to break the land bridge, either to break through to the Sea of Azov, but failing that, to get within rocket artillery range, to hold that road at risk. Now, they were unable to do that with brute force. They were unable to smash through those well-prepared defenses of the Surovikin line. What's happened over the next 3 years is that Ukraine has increased dramatically the range and capabilities of its medium-range drone strike forces. And so they've been able to hit those same targets, those same roads, using newer and more advanced weapons to have the same effect. And of course, Russia in this war has proven how effective it is to choke supply lines. And nowhere was that more clear than in their Kursk counteroffensive, when instead of confronting Ukrainian forces in Kursk head on, they focus.
So again, this is coming out of Crimea, obviously. So I think we've kind of done enough coverage on that. I think we've beat that horse to a bloody pulp as far as the Ukrainians' effort in and around Crimea to choke that off. Let's go on to what he's speaking about here in Konstantinivka, where I believe the news is not as good. And I believe the Russians are making a push into Konstantinivka on several sides, as we just showed on the deep state map. But let's see if we can get an update here from Jerome Starkey and what's taking place there.
One way, not at all. Over the course of the last week, there have been almost 1,400 missiles and drones, long-range missiles and drones fired at targets across Ukraine. That's reported by Ukraine's Air Force. And Russian forces are slowly beginning to envelop, or rather advance their attempt to envelop Konstantinivka, which is at the southern end of Ukraine's fortress belt. The fortress belt is that very well-prepared, dug-in set of defenses.
In this, again, something we've explained time and time again on the show. Pretty easy to show you guys on the map as well. Doesn't really take much to kind of see their line, and a lot of people have been drawing it from Lyman up there. You go from Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, down here, Drushivka, and then up to Konstantinivka. You can see that kind of belt that is being used in those settlements that are closely together there, and obviously trying to utilize that as kind of like a backstop and keeping the Russian forces as far away from that as humanly possible. But down here in the south is Konstantinivka, and it looks like the Russian forces, like I said, are making a push into that general vicinity, which is, again, on the southern edge of this belt. Up here, they were trying to get into Lyman. Looked like the Ukrainians were doing a pretty substantial job, pretty good job of holding them off in this territory up here in the north. And it looks like now they're trying a new aspect and down here into the south, down by Konstantinivka. So just to kind of give you a visualization, a representation of what that is, what's going on in that area as well. But back to this real quick.
That Ukraine controls on the eastern edge of Donetsk. It runs from Sloviansk in the north down to Konstantinivka in the south. The Institute for the Study of War has documented Russia's advances through Konstantinivka, but they do not hold the city entirely by any stretch of the imagination. And Ukrainian forces still holding out in Chaziv Yar to the north and east of Konstantinivka. Chaziv Yar, the town just behind Bakhmut. So when Ukrainian forces eventually ceded Bakhmut, they fell back to Chaziv Yar. That has become highly contested as well. Interestingly, the Institute for the Study of War notes that the beginning of Russia's summer offensive really...
But again, that creates a dangerous situation, and I hate to bring it up, but I mean, you can kind of see it here. I mean, you don't really need to be a military genius to see if you have, and again, I'll go back to drawing on the map. I'll utilize blue, but if you have Ukrainians in this position here, right, just on the outskirts there of Chaziv Yar, and then obviously you have the the Russians trying to push into Konstantinivka this way. If in fact they do, and you can see the Russians pushing to the outskirts here of Chaziv Yar as well. So obviously you don't want to see this happen, right? You don't want to see the Russians to the north of Chaziv Yar and the south of Chaziv Yar to link up, obviously cutting off whatever Ukrainians would be in this general vicinity. Obviously, that's not something we want to see, and I'm sure that they're utilizing whatever abilities they have to get the men out of that, at least the amount of men that they'd like to see get out of that situation, and maybe kind of resupply here in Konstantinivka. Again, that's just speculation on my end and my point, but you can kind of see here what they would try to, they want to be avoiding at all cost is a substantial amount of troops being caught between the two pincers here, north of Chaziv Yar and south of Chaziv Yar, as they push into Konstantinivka as well. So again, just kind of helps me look at what's going on in that area and see kind of what aspects the Ukrainians need to, where they need to move, what they need to utilize, and what the Russians are trying to do. Oh, you know what? I almost had it. I almost put this back on right away.
It's been speculation that instead of confronting the fortress belt head on, I say, an analysis rather than speculation, that instead of hitting the fortress belt head on, Russia might sensibly try to go round it. So from the south and from the north, that would certainly make military.
Hold on. What'd you say? Tiff says, people in the chat keep asking about Finland border with Russian troops. What specifically? Anything specific on that? Scaffolding is almost up, Hawk says. Is that for the, that's for the, hold on. Is that for the Kennedy building? Let me see if I can go into, I'll look into what's his face's live stream there. Jim Acosta. But yeah, let me know, Tiff, what people are saying specifically, what they want to look at. I'm not sure exactly as far as that's concerned. I'll go to Jim Acosta live here.
All came down in front of. Does anybody? Am I the oldest person here? So I'm the only person who would know. I don't. What's that? There you go. That's fine. I'm soaked in sweat anyway. Oh, very good. Oh, good. Substack, YouTube, Twitter. Okay, good. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, good. Okay. All right. So people are watching us. Somebody just.
It looks like they're still getting the scaffolding up to the position where they need to take down the letters, right? I can't see behind them, but it looks like they're almost there.
Proved it to us. And yeah, for folks who are not watching this on Substack, you're missing out. It's a great platform, but we appreciate the YouTubers and the so-called Twitter. I'm an old guy, old habits die hard. But this is happening, as the meme goes. I think this is happening, and this crowd has steadily grown. Sam, my producer Sam's been with me all afternoon. I would say we have a couple hundred people down here now. Oh my gosh! Wow. Yeah. So you must be excited about this.
Kennedy Center. I learned about unions when, and
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're at the correct moment in time. Looks like they're close, though. It doesn't look like they're far away as far as the scaffolding is concerned. But if you're just tuning in, this is the live stream from Jim Acosta looking at the scaffolding going up to remove Donald Trump's name from the Kennedy Center there. I think he compared it to the Berlin Wall coming down when we just were coming in there. I think he was talking about. But I don't know. Looks like they're going on another break. Must be a union job. Must be a union job because it's like the 14th break since we started chiming in here, since we started tuning in. So again, pays to be in the union, ladies and gentlemen. Pays to be in the union. But I don't know if they're done for the day. It must be 3:55, right? So I don't think they'll be taking them down today. I think they might be done for the day.
so I was here right before.
Today must have been just get up the scaffolding, right? Only one thing at a time. You don't want to rush yourself in the union. you don't want to rush yourself. You know what I mean? Safety first. But it looks like they got it set up. But I think they'll kind of be taken off for the day. I think 4:00 they'll check out. I don't think they'll be working too much later than that. But let me see here. Let's see. Somebody said they could put me up there and I would have taken those Don letters down by now. Yeah, dyslexia fingers, absolutely. But you don't want to rush it, right? You want to milk it. You got to milk it as much as possible. But let me see. Let me see if I can look at this map real quick and see what you guys are talking about. I'll leave that on in the background just in case anything happens. Let me see. Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum. I'm loving it. So you could probably look at it through here. I know you guys were asking about Finland. I mean, you can see pretty clearly Finland's representation. Here's St. Petersburg, right? St. Pete right here. So you can see the proximity to old Finland. Here's the border of Finland. You can see in red is Vyborg, which is Russian, and then obviously the territory there. But I know you were asking about the Ruskies on their doorstep, and they've been on their doorstep. You can tell that if you go back in history, Finland and Russia have had their skirmishes, let's just say. But yeah, that's kind of, I don't know exactly what you were asking for, but just kind of the proximity between Finland and Russia. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know exactly where I could probably look it up. Russian troops, Finland, real quick. Kind of get the exact location. This says Russia's actively expanded its military infrastructure along the 1,340-kilometer border with Finland. Longest-term plans to massively increase its regional troop presence. While most of the current forces are deployed in Ukraine, current construction on major new bases indicates a shift towards long-term Cold War-era force posturing. Let's see here if they know. It says here 20,000 personnel near the Finnish border. Does it say where exactly, though? Finnish military intelligence estimates that once the conflict in Ukraine concludes, Russia plans to build up its northern grouping along the Finnish border and broader NATO border, as many as 80 to 115,000 personnel. Let's see there. Petrozavodsk, located just 160 to 100 kilometers from the Finnish border. So it's the Republic of Karelia. Now, of course, they don't give me anything. Let me see if I'll put that into the map. Copy. Put this into the map. Maybe this will give me the exact location for you guys. Yeah, so here's the location there. So here's Petrozavodsk, and you can see the proximity to Finland is excuse me, is up here. If you zoom out a little bit further, here's Finland. Here's Petrozavodsk. So it's about 160, 190 kilometers. But I'm sure they're all over the place. I'm sure that's just one of the areas in which has the Russian troop, the Russian buildup in that area. But you can kind of see, let's see if I can get the ruler out. You can see exactly how close it is. So we'll go from Petrozavodsk to the Finnish border. It's about 207 kilometers, right? But obviously you got different towns and settlements here, much, much closer than that. But yeah, just in case anybody was wondering in the chat how close they were, the proximity to what was going on. St. Pete's, I think, is even closer than that, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, maybe because I'm zoomed out. Yeah, St. Pete's only about 146 kilometers, right? So what's that in miles? Roughly about 90 miles St. Pete is from the Finnish border here. So obviously you can see the closeness and proximity before we even bring Petrozavodsk into play. So, all right, I appreciate you guys. I'll get you guys out of here. Why don't we start thanking some people that were kind enough to send in a Venmo. Venmo's just up here in the corner. If you got 4 quarters in those couch cushions and you can send them in and it doesn't take away from any other aspect of your daily life, I would just beg you do so. It goes a long, long way in helping this independent channel. Hold on, one more. Do we have anything else? Tiff's giving me updates on the fly here. Parnas said the letters will be removed at 6 p.m., I think. Guess that's a whole different... Oh, yeah, they're going to get... One crew does the scaffolding. It's got to be a union job. That's definitely a union job. Fucking 100%. One scaffolding crew, one for the letter removal, right? Because I'm sure there's a totally separate set of skills that it takes to set up scaffolding, and then another totally set of skills that have to remove the lettering. And of course, I'm kidding. I'm being facetious. But again, I won't be on at 6, unfortunately. But we'll see if we can cover it. Shit, I'm not even on tomorrow. I don't know. Maybe I'll pop on for that. Maybe we'll do some some breaking news as the letters are coming off again, like it's the removal of the Berlin Wall. Tear that wall down. But no, thank you guys so much. Like I said, we are an independent channel. We have no affiliations. We have no outside resources, financial backers, sponsors, anything like that. We're not talking to people that want to sell you their products. And I'm going to tell you that it changed my goddamn life because they give me a cut of the sales. But in reality, I've never seen that product, used that product a day in my goddamn life. I do not install any ads here on YouTube on our side. I think it is just the default YouTube, and that's about it. Other than that, it's you guys that kick in a buck or two every single day that helps continue to make this show grow. Again, I got to get, so if you noticed, it was a little bit darker in here today and a little less blue. That's because both of my blue lights decided to die on the same day. How the fuck that's even remotely possible as far as possibility is concerned, I'm not sure. You know what I mean? As far as chances and statistical possibility, it just doesn't seem possible that both of them died at the exact same moment, but they did. So unfortunately, there's things to keep up on. Obviously, trying to grow the platform and get a subscriber base where other people notice you and recognize you is another thing. So thank you guys so much. Like I said, there's the Venmo up in the corner. There's a YouTube membership you can sign up for just underneath me. And then if you go to patreon.com/Boston Brian, the backbone of this community, both the YouTube memberships, the people that donate in the chat, and the Patreon community, absolutely the backbone of this. Absolutely. So appreciate you guys. You can head over to the 3 great tiers. If it fits your financial capabilities, thank you so so much. If not, you can do the free stuff, the liking, the sharing, the subscribing, all of those things free to do and go a long way in helping this channel. I thank you so much to the mods for making this a possibility as well. And let's see if I can thank some people on the old Venmo side of things to say thank you for your kindness, your contributions, your generosity, and keeping this show going. Thank you so much today to Bry Guy. What's going on, my brother? I see you in there. Bry says, Slava Ukraini. Hope this helps. Absolutely. Every little bit helps, guys. It really, really does. As, mundane and ridiculous as it is to say, it absolutely does. So if you send in 30 cents, if you send in 50 cents, if you send in $1, it definitely helps. So thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for getting us to this position. Thank you, Bry Guy. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Jenny Faye. Thank you, Nancy, over the last couple days. Very much appreciate you and everything that you've done. And let's see if we can thank some 3 people on today's show. 3 people on today's show were nice enough to throw in a super chat or reach the YouTube membership or a milestone. So thank you, Darkly Yours. Very much appreciate you for being one of the 3 in there today, becoming a new YouTube member. Hope you find a nice welcoming spot there in the community. And I hope I find you coming back show after show. So thank you so much. Very much appreciate you. Thank you, Wes. Don't make a show of a war. Don't pretend it's a game. No, it is not a game at all. And I think everybody recognizes that before it's even said, Wes. So appreciate you, brother. Thank you for the kind contribution. Thank you, No Money G, as always. No, great show by the fans. I only do my best. I know I probably stumble and stutter and flub every single show because I'm a human being. But I appreciate you guys that consistently come back and put up with my bullshit and watch the show because of the the things that we cover and obviously the important topics, and being a part of the resistance and the opposition is very, very important right now. So No Money G, thank you, Wes, thank you, Darkly Yours. Very much appreciate you guys, and I will see you, if not later on today, if the letters get taken down, I'll see you Sunday for the Sunday show, the main show. That's going to be Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be 10 a.m. Pacific. So please make sure you check that out. Hit the notification bell. That'll tell you when I go live. That should tell you when I put out a shorts, which we've been trying to do more and more of. So if you could, add to the views, if you could add to the likes on those shorts, whether it be here on YouTube or Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, all of those things. If you could kind of, boost the channel, boost the show. I think we're over 7,000 now on Facebook, so that's doing pretty well. Over 20,000 now on Instagram, over 20,000 now on YouTube. We're about 250,000 on TikTok. So we're trying to kick ass. I think Threads is the one I'm lacking in. So if we could get some, if we get some traction there, or again, just build up all of these platforms as well. So I would be very, 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 very grateful for you guys. So thank you so much to everybody contributing to the show. And thank you everybody contributing to the Help 99 campaign with the NAFO 69 Sniffer Brigade, the Summer of Drones. We get the best patches in the game. Right. I think that's another reason why we think we do so well in these, because I take a little bit of time to design the best patches that everybody might want. So even if you're not kind of, in the Boston Brian Blunt Politics crew and community, and you see this on the website, you're like, I want that. I definitely want the Skyfall. I definitely want the Summer of Drones with the Red Sox hat, cheers into the fucking Ukrainian military with the skyline in the background and the drones. It's the whole 9 yards. I think it's fantastic. So to be, again, past 53% of the way there in less than 2 weeks, 81 separate donations totaling 11,061 euro, which is, again, above 12,000-ish. Let me see if I can do it. I'm usually pretty good. I think it's about 12.8, maybe 12.6, 12.8. Let me see. So 11,061 euro is, I want to say, I think I was close. Yeah, it's about, no, that's not right either. It's about 12,798. So like I said, right around $12,800 raised in 2 weeks is pretty substantial. Again, like for a channel of this size, it's nothing to shake a stick at, the amount of subscribers that we have, but there's definitely platforms with substantially more, let's just say. So very much appreciate. I think we punch well, beyond our weight class. And let's keep doing that. Let's finish this out. And then hopefully, like I said, we could even be as lucky as to, hand over this vehicle in person. And what a fantastic honor that would be. So appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys Sunday, if not later on today, when the Berlin Wall comes down, when Trump's name comes off the Kennedy Center. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to the best chat on earth. Thank you to the Pops. Very much appreciate you. I'll see you guys Sunday, all right? But look for that notification bell, because you never know. I might just pop back on and start covering Donald Trump's removal from the Kennedy Center. Sorry, didn't mean to get you excited, but I'm out of it. Well, the one thing that I can say about that, Earth, is I am very happy that the policies and the statements and the rhetoric of Graham Plattner is what the Mainers want to see. That's one thing that I am, that gives me joy. The one thing that makes me happy is the fact that Mainers voted to have the things that Graham Plattner espouses put into action, at least for the primary. So definitely good to be able to have on the right.
Вітаю, Бостон Брайан. Мій позивний танцор. Я представник 72-ї бригади. Дякую тобі і твоїм підписникам за цей донат, за цю чудову машину, яка буде нас возити усіх на позиції, захищати Україну і наближати перемогу. Разом усі до перемоги. Дякую.
Here's a thought. Grow a sack, fill it with some balls.
Вітаю, Бостон Брайан. Мій позивний танцор. Я представник 72-ї бригади. Дякую тобі і твоїм підписникам за цей донат, за цю чудову машину, яка буде нас возити усіх на позиції, захищати Україну і наближати перемогу. Разом усі до перемоги. Дякую.
Has a very special place in the heart. It's an incredible thing. To officially name the undisputed, when did this come out? The undisputed champion of beautiful, clean coal. Somebody said, is that a Trump statement or is that real? For miners, do we love miners? I love miners. We're inviting Americans from all across the country to come. God bless the United States. The new form of vicious violation to our country. Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
What in the hell was that all about? He says wrecked him, damn near killed him.
When you ran out the healthy arms, you ran out of really healthy. They had great arms, but they ran out. It's called sports. It's called baseball in particular, and pitchers, I guess you could say, in really particular.
Obama.
My superpower is being honest. I will eat my neighbors.